Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this evening's council meeting. Before we formally commence this evening's business, can I please remind all members of the following. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed. Please do not repeat points which have already been made. Please show respect to other councillors and avoid interrupting other councillors, and also respect the position of the Lord Mayor. Please indicate by a clear show of hands if you wish to speak, and I will then call you as appropriate. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded to YouTube, so members of the public can see and hear what is being said and decided. The first item on the agenda this evening is agenda item 1, which offers the opportunity for members of the public to submit advanced questions. I can confirm that no advanced questions have been received. Agenda item 2 relates to declarations of interest. If any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda and have not already been included in the register of interest, please declare them before any discussion takes place on that item. Agenda item 3 relates to the minutes of the combined scrutiny meeting held on the 5th of February 2025, and I would ask members just to note those minutes. And once again, moving on to agenda item 4, this relates to a minute extract of minute number 7 of the Executive Committee meeting held on the 14th of January, relating to the council tax base and NNDR1 2025-26 for noting. You may wish to leave making any comments from the executive minute extract until we move on to the next item, which is item 5. So moving on to item 5, main item of business this evening. This relates to the 2025/26 budget, and the details and recommendations are set out in your agenda papers. I now call upon the leader to introduce the budget for 2025-2026 period. Leader.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I'd like to start in saying that in setting this budget, it's been a challenge to maintain those statutory services which we are obliged to deliver and those discretionary services that we wish to provide here in Exeter. Of course, we would like to do more, but we have to be sensible with residents' money, and this means we have to take some difficult, tough decisions to maintain those services. Our medium-term financial plan identified the need to address a £3.5 million budget shortfall. Extensive consultation has taken place to ensure that our identified priorities match those of our residents and communities, as well as those who visit or work in Exeter. We have listened and taken account of what residents told us was important to them. This balanced budget has been achieved by focusing on priorities, service efficiencies, and sustainable income streams. It is being delivered against the backdrop of the government's white paper on devolution and local government reorganisation. Councillors of all parties have voted unanimously to prepare a case for unitary authority, which will include the City of Exeter. This council and its partners have an important role to play in improving the lives and well-being of everyone in Exeter. While local government reorganisation offers a huge opportunity for the city, We remain fully focused on the day job of delivering the best public services to residents, businesses and visitors. We have had to look very carefully at all the services we provide, where we have identified the need for savings, impact assessments and full consultation will take place. Lord Mayor, before I get into the details of the budget, I want to take a moment to thank our officers at the Council who continue to deliver for residents who rely on them. And I want to briefly highlight some of our successes over the last 12 months. We are continuing to focus our construction programme to build new social housing in Exeter. Officers successfully relocated 61 households from Rent's House in preparation for the redevelopment of the area. All tenants moved to properties by agreement and were fully supported by our housing teams. Some will move back to Whipton once we have completed the first block of Whipton Gardens later this year. In October, the first residents moved into Brook House, a development of 21 new passive flats constructed on the site of a former car park located off Hamlin Gardens. Our award-winning retrofit programme is continuing to cut carbon footprint and reduce energy bills for our tenants. By March of this year, we would have retrofitted 920 council houses. A bid for 4.34 million of Warm Homes Social Housing Fund Wave 3 has been submitted, supported by 5.6 million of co-funding. If successful, it will deliver 140 property retrofit completions per year for the next 3 years. Our extra care scheme, Edwards Court, continues to prove very popular, and it is at full capacity with a healthy waiting list. We continue to work hard to assist those facing homelessness and rough sleeping. The latest rough sleeping count is expected to show a fall in figures for Exeter, although there is still much to do, but this recorded reduction is good to see. We continue to support residents struggling with the cost of living. Our team delivered extra help to low-income households struggling with high cost of essentials through the Household Support Fund 5 and 6 in 2024 and 2025. More than 5,000 awards have been made, totaling more than £775,000. 46% of those awards were made to low-income households, including at least one child. 47% of households contained a disabled person. 923 low-income pensioners was granted £200 to help with heating costs after losing the winter fuel payments. More than 200 households identified as likely to be entitled to pension credit have received personalised advice and support to make a claim and access other support. I want to thank our benefits team for making sure that those people who need it get that help, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, we recently published the Exeter Plan, our new local plan following a major consultation. The plan addresses how we will achieve long-term sustainable growth in this city. This has been a huge undertaking, and I'm delighted that it will soon be submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. Outline permission has also been approved for a new major development and a new community at Water Lane. This 6-hectare brownfield former industrial site will be transformed into a vibrant residential-led mixed-use urban development featuring up to 980 new homes. The plan includes details of urban living with commercial, community, cultural and residential space and reflects Exeter's vision for a sustainable and inclusive future. A significant sum in lieu of affordable housing at the Harlequin housing development will assist us in our own council build programme. And I shall be bringing forward further proposals on affordable housing in the near future. A Planning application has been submitted for the replacement of Madison Bridge at the quay. Hooray! Working with Devon County Council, we look forward to the long-awaited completion of this project. We have completed the annual infrastructure funding statement, ensuring transparent reporting on developer contributions, and implemented the revised still charging schedule. The team secured approximately 4.7 million through community infrastructure levy funding and received 1.06 million in Section 106 funding to support infrastructure delivery. There is much to look forward in the coming year, including the long-awaited start of the construction on prominent sites, including the Royal Clarence and indeed Harlequins. The continued rollout of food waste collection has helped us to increase our recycling rates. Over the next year, we will be seeking to roll out food waste to those who currently not receive the service. And we will be progressing with the redevelopment of the waste depot, including the refit of the materials reclamation facility. We have set aside an initial budget of £8 million, partly funded through seal receipts for this work, which will have a significant impact on our recycling rates in the future. Latest figures show that 99.9% of all black and green bin collections in the city were completed successfully. Our environmental team, health team, continues to ensure 99% of food premises are compliant with food hygiene and securing good ratings. Reducing carbon emissions and the fight against climate change continues to be a key priority for this council. We have achieved carbon literate organisational bronze status after training more than 250 staff in carbon literacy, including the Chief Executive, Strategic Directors, Heads of Service, Councillors and other officers. Our pioneering water lane smart grid and storage project was completed in 2024 and has received a series of industry commendations. The City Council secured £100,000 from South West Net Zero Hub to develop a case for new solar sites. This will support the decarbonisation of the council-owned buildings, provide energy independence and reduce energy bills. Our car parks and open spaces continue to be much loved by our residents. Exeter won gold in the South West Britain in Bloom competition and silver in the national competition. Last year, we secured long-term future of the key cellars with significant repairs and stabilisation works to the historic retaining wall, a major feat of engineering. Bromans Farm playing field being brought back into use with significant remedial works after being used by the Environment AG also during the flood relief scheme. We continue to develop and regenerate play areas across the city for the benefit of local families, with Maryville Park in St Thomas, Lakeside Avenue in County Square and Mulberry Close in Whittington amongst those parks to benefit. We also continue to maintain our splash parks in Heaventree and St Thomas, which provide free family entertainment and are hugely popular during the summer months. Work is ongoing to restore the canal to its former glory by removing old vessels from the waterways. We continue to prioritise safety in the city centre. The upgrade of the CCTV control centre was recently completed. A new community safety team for the city centre has been created in collaboration with our partners. Improving the CCTV control room was a pledge that we made publicly a couple of years ago, and I'm so pleased that we've been able to deliver this now. I'm proud also to say that the CCTV control room staff were recently awarded the Police and Crime Commissioner's commendation for their excellent work in identifying and help to reprehend a serious offender in the city centre. We continue to invest heavily in our leisure service to improve health and well-being across and the quality of life for all our residents. There are currently more than 12,000 leisure members regularly visiting our centres. In the calendar year 2024, the number of visits across our leisure sites was 1,696,463. The number of visits at St Sunbal's Point was 1,222,386. An increase in the swim schools saw more than 2,000 young children learn to swim at SSP. Not bad, Lord Mayor, for a white elephant. The number of visits at the Riverside Leisure Centre was 372,303. An increase in the swim school saw more than 2,000 young children learn to swim at the Riverside. Our pioneering GP referral centre scheme, in partnership with the NHS, is helping residents who have suffered heart attacks, cancer and other conditions to regain their health and fitness. A record number of tickets has already been sold for the Women's Rugby World Cup in 2025. Exeter, as we know, is a host city with 7 games at Sandy Park, including 2 quarterfinals. And we're very much looking forward to this global event. We have a team at the council dedicated to making sure the tournament is a big success locally, that Exeter enjoys, and all the benefits it will bring. We are dealing with things like transport and arrangements for the big games, as well as creating a lasting legacy for the city. Exeter remains a thriving city of heritage and culture and a UNESCO City of Literature. It was another successful year for the Royal Albert Memorial Museum, with excellent figures for its exhibitions. Events were held with partners across the city and beyond, including English Touring Opera, Exeter City of Literature, the Northcote Theatre and the Dartmoor National Park. As part of an ongoing collaboration with the NHS, Age UK, ECC Social Housing and Care Homes, the RAM delivered outreach sessions across the city. The Corn Exchange continues to enjoy excellent audience numbers, and recent works have further improved the experience for audiences and performers. I would particularly recommend to everybody in the chamber to attend the celebration of Northern Soul this summer. They won't be disappointed. Our historic Guild Hall supported the Cathedral and Bishop's offices with the enthronement of the 72nd Bishop of Exeter. We also celebrated the 80th anniversary of the D-Day and saw the RAF Bryce Norton exercise their freedom of the city on Armed Forces Day. We are all proud of our links to the Armed Forces, Lord Mayor, and the work that continues to support the Exeter Armed Forces Covenant. Finally, a key priority is a well-run council. We are focused on delivering efficient and effective value-for-money services that meets the needs of businesses, residents, visitors, and other stakeholders. Our recent senior leadership restructure is now complete and has delivered a saving. We will continue to improve the way we work and progress our plans to put the customer at the heart of everything. The restructure will ensure we have a fit-for-purpose system and processes with empowered staff working in collaboration to deliver the best outcome for residents. We want our staff and members to feel valued, supported, and equipped to achieve the best they can for residents and stakeholders. And we will work together to build a one council ethos. We will develop our staff to ensure they are highly motivated, value-driven, well-trained, and supported with agile working practices and technologies. We will use customer insight to guide how our services are developed and delivered. Modernised, cost-effective, and accessible customer-focused services will enable more people to self-serve when they want. We will also maintain a face-to-face service for those who need it. Lord Mayor, transparency and openness in decision-making are essential. We will actively communicate and engage with our residents and communities to seek their views. We have carried out widespread consultation and engagement with residents recently, and we will continue to do so in line with our consultation charter. Equality and diversity are a top priority to promote inclusion in all what we do. This is an area that we will not roll back from. Lord Mayor, thank you for allowing me to highlight some of the good things that we do well here in Exeter. And I'd now like to move on to our budget proposals themselves. 3.5 million, Lord Mayor, is a lot of money to find. And I want to thank the work of our officers in preparing this budget, and also thank the opposition groups for taking the time to prepare their own budgets and amendments. Again, I want to stress that this work has been framed by the consultations we have carried out with the residents. The areas of the budget reductions have been set out, and I will now explain what that means. There are some relatively straightforward proposals which we are putting. We will reduce our assumption for the annual pay award by 1%. Confirm business rate pool membership for another year. Stop budgeting for pension contributions for individuals not in our pension scheme. We will reduce duplication across our cultural portfolio now that it's been brought together under one head of service. We will begin a project to improve the digitalisation of our services to deliver efficiency savings. Together, these proposals are 1.8 million. The proposed adjustment to the ledger budget is £586,000. As I highlighted earlier, our leisure services has a thriving membership and fantastic facilities, and we continue to invest heavily. But despite the extensive efforts to drive income and footfall at Norfolk Swimming Pool since the leisure services were brought back into house in 2020, low usage and revenue figures have seen little improvement. Combined with a projected increase in repairs and ongoing costs to maintain the building, the future management of the building by Exeter City Council has become unsustainable. It's very disappointing that it's come to this, and of course, we would like to keep funding the facility. But we must bear in mind that we have two exceptionally swimming pools in a very close proximity. I want to stress that any changes to the current service will be subject to full consultation and impact assessment. At Arena, we're looking to work with partners in running this facility. Athletics, of course, will still be there, and community use will still be there. These partnerships have worked very well elsewhere in the city, like at the Exeter playing fields. Partnerships help us to reduce our costs while maintaining and improving facilities for the public. Again, I want to stress that any significant changes to the current service provision will be subject to full consultation and impact assessment. I want to briefly mention, Lord Mayor, the Citizens Advice Exeter. All of us here at the Council would wish to record our thanks and appreciation for the work of this organisation. We've always had a good relationship with Citizens Advice Exeter here in Exeter. We had previously made a difficult decision in this Council on the ceasing of direct grant funding. But there are other ways in which we continue to support and assist their work. I've had meetings with Citizens Advice and wish, like them, we have now agreed to reset our relationship going forward and discuss the best ways of working together. I'm pleased to say that we've been able to reach a new rental agreement, which will enable them to continue the very important work that they do. We are also budgeting, Lord Mayor, for an adjustment in car park income of £627,500. The council did not increase car parking charges for the last 2 years, primarily in recognition of the cost of living crisis facing us all. And as you may have seen already with the next executive papers, the proposed increase for this year that we consulted on late last year will now not go ahead. But there's no escaping from the fact that revenue from car parking generates an important income for the council to run its services. After freezing charges for 2 years, the total car parking budget will have to increase overall by 7% from April of this year. To put that figure in perspective, the charge for 2-hour stay in a central car park would increase by 32p. We have studied the feedback from residents on the budget consultation on this subject. Of course, when asked the question, should we put car parking charges up? The answer comes back as no. But we still have to make these tough decisions, I'm afraid. We're also going to look to modify the transaction charges for the Ringo app, explore commercially activity options in car parks, and move Hull Road and the Triangle car parks to the central scheme. Again, there will be a consultation before any of these factors are implemented. It's worth noting on car parks that the council has committed £2.5 million of capital resources to a number of car park upgrade projects in 25-26, including Guildhall, John Lewis, and Princess Anne 2. We are not proposing, Lord Mayor, to levy charges on the arena site or any other council leisure sites other than Riverside. Let me repeat that. We are not proposing to levy any charges on the arena site or any of our council leisure sites other than Riverside. From 2026, sadly, there is no budget for net zero identified. That's why we intend to use the former bus station site, currently empty, as a temporary car park to generate income, which will go directly towards creating a net zero budget. We think this is a good use of money that will be generated in the short term while the car park is there. It is still our intention, and always has been, Lord Mayor, to work with partners to bring forward a meanwhile use before the wider site is redeveloped, because we all know that this will take time. We didn't think the time was right, Lord Mayor, for admission charges in our car parks. It risks hitting those who cannot afford modern, more efficient vehicles. We are one of the few councils that do not charge blue badge holders to use our car parks, unlike the Liberal Democrat-led East Devon, Mid Devon and Teignbridge local authorities. We do not intend to charge this now. But it may be something that we may have to fall in line with our friends around Exeter at a later stage. There are a number of other proposals in order to balance the budget. The Net Zero team are qualified carbon literacy trainers, and we will seek to offer this training to interested organisations in our immediate area and region. We will also seek to increase income across houses of multiple occupation licensing, our marketing and tourism offer, and our livestock centre facility. We will continue our efforts to reduce the number of private leases used to provide temporary accommodation in favour of more cost-effective methods. We will continue to increase the amount of time our engineering team work on large capital projects and to use additional income from the Guildhall Shopping Centre as and when we borrow for further investment in it. We are also proposing to stop taking cash and cheques directly at our premises. However, we are mindful of the need to protect those who rely on this method of payment in their daily lives. Already, People can pay their council tax, business rates, housing rent, debtor bills at the post office or local paper and convenience stores. We will introduce the ability for people to pay for car parking at pay point, so that those who wish to pay cash to park will be able to do so. We will, of course, factor in the time required to travel to the nearest store in order to pay. Again, this proposal will be subject to consultation, Lord Mayor, before its full implementation. We have listened to the consultation views, and I'm proposing that we will no longer claim private land without a contribution from the landowner, saving over £30,000 per year. Added together, all these proposals come to £3.505 million and deliver a balanced budget. We are proposing to increase our minimum general fund reserves to 3.1 million. It could be argued at a time like this, we should use general reserves, and the papers later in the agenda detail the reasons and areas and the amounts that the 151 officer states are appropriate to maintain. Lord Mayor, we will pretend to take that officer's advice. However, the medium-term financial plan uses the general fund balances in future years, and reducing these now merely pushes the requirement to save amounts to next year and beyond. It also reduces the safety net in place to address the risk of some savings failing to materialise or taking slightly longer than anticipated. It's called maintaining resilience. Suggestions to use the extended producer responsibility tax is also legitimate. However, the budget we have proposed offsets the national insurance contribution for the employer increase, but leaves something in reserve, as we do not yet know how much we will receive going forward. Using it all this year risks us needing to find further savings at short notice for next year. Doing what we are doing, proposing, means that we receive, and if we receive what is expected, then we will have resources to put forward to the £3 million that we still have to find next year. There continues to be economic uncertainties and global volatility that makes this essential. There are some earmarked reserves which we are planning to repurpose. In the budget monitoring papers, later on in the agenda, there is a proposal to transfer the reserve earmarked for the lease guarantee to the governance review reserve to create funding for a budget for local government reorganisation and Exeter's unitary bid. Additionally, we will propose to transfer the funding set aside for the compulsory purchase order to the governance reserve at the year end. Lord Mayor, I wanted to stress that despite all the challenges we face, Exeter continues to set one of the lowest council tax rates in the country. The proposed Band D council tax for 25-26 for Exeter is £185.76p, which means that our share of the council tax will increase by 2.99%, which is £5.39 a year, around 10p a week increase. In setting this budget tonight, the aggregate requirements of the Exeter City Council, Devon County Council, Office and Police Crime Commissioner, Devon and Cornwall, and the Devon and Somerset Fire Authority will result in a council tax for the city of Exeter for 25 of £2,379.90p for a Band D property, an overall increase of £109.68 or 4.8%, or 4.83%. The breakdown of the charges: the County Council will get £1,801.26. The Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner will get £288 collected. Devon and Somerset Fire Authority will get £104.68. And all we get is £185.76. This, as I said, equals that total of which the council's share of the total bill of £2,379.90 is a mere 7.8%. That is the reality of what we take from the residents should they raise it with you on the doorstep. I repeat, our share of the council tax is increasing by 10p per week. Lord Mayor, I think it is pretty good value for a city which does so much as I have highlighted earlier, and we will continue to assure that we provide the very best services we can for the benefit of everyone in Exeter, while maintaining a responsible, prudent approach to spending and ensuring that savings are realistic and achievable. Lord Mayor, I move.
Thank you very much, Leader. I believe that Councillor Wright is going to second. Is that correct?
Yes, I second the motion.
And do you reserve your right to speak?
I reserve the right to speak, please.
Thank you very much. I also wish to confirm that in accordance with Standing Order 10 in brackets 7, I have been informed that both the Progressive Group and the Conservative Group have given the necessary notice of their intention to move an amendment to the budget. So therefore, we enter into a debate on the budget. So before we enter into a debate on the budget, we shall take these amendments, debate them and vote upon them. May I just advise that the right to reply at the end of the debate for the mover/seconder of a motion should address only those points raised during the debate. We will take the amendments in the order in which they have been received. Therefore, I would like to call upon Councillor Moore to propose the amendment on behalf of the Progressive Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Leader. I'd like to propose our amendments to the budget.
Second, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. As the Leader points out, there's much to celebrate in Exeter and the work of the Council, but there's also much to be done. And there is a lot that we could do better. So we aim to set this out in our budget amendment. And we prepared our budget amendment and submitted them in full for them to be published and available on the website so that everybody can see in advance what is proposed in terms of savings to be made and proposals for generating income. So we cover 4 areas which I think will actually benefit the council quite significantly. Our first is around focusing on governance. There has been much work to improve the scrutiny function of this council. I'd like to thank my colleagues who are on the scrutiny programme board who are trying very hard. And I would hope to see future work on the scrutiny of the council's budget rather than continuing to be a last minute. We have also set out a number of principles for managing the budget over this future year. We want to see a close eye and reining in on the use of external consultants. 2.3 million has been spent on consultants this year, and we must make sure that such expenditure remains firmly within the budget. Being a consultant myself, I don't have a problem with using consultants, but we have to be absolutely clear why we're using them and it remains within the budget. I also feel that as well as the governance earmark funds, we need to make sure that we review all the SIL and Section 106 funds. We need to use it or lose it before local government reorganisation comes. And it's important community monies that are set aside there, we don't want to lose them. We must make sure that we're very carefully thinking about how much we spend on local government reorganisation. It will be a distraction, however hard we try for it not to be. And we look that this money is coming from reserves, the transformation reserves we've identified, rather than distracting that from services. So I welcome the proposal that's been made, but we have to make sure that it doesn't spiral out of control. We must remain focused on meeting our community's needs, and our proposals find money to actually really support people who are living precariously. The cost of living continues to impact on people's lives, particularly as we've heard again that the energy price cap will be going up today. We really value and appreciate the work of the Citizens Advice Service, and we have identified where we can find some transitional funding as they continue to make efforts to move to a new business plan. My colleague will talk about how we envisage the management of houses of multiple occupation can be improved and invested in. And we really have to find the money to support our climate change team. We've actually found a further £7,000. That is insufficient, and I am very amused by the irony of your proposals, Leader. However, given that the money runs out in 2026, and the calculations on the current net zero for Exeter will not be even near net zero until gone 2050, I think we have to make sure that we do have a renewed effort on actually achieving net zero. Looking closely at our earmarked funds, there is a very clear and specific proposal which I think we can all support. There is money in the budget to produce a biodiversity strategy for Exeter. We cannot protect nature if we don't know what we have got and how we can think about how we can better support its development. This is really important now that there is a new planning mechanism called Biodiversity Net Gain, and developers are coming forward wanting schemes. At the moment, it's being put together on a project-by-project basis. By having a strategy and working with our partners across the city and our communities, many of whom spend hours and hours looking after our green spaces, we can actually have a very strategic approach to ensuring that developers' money is spent well. And so there are funds there that we've identified that absolutely align to that and will be deliverable within the year. We must maintain our frontline services and improve what we have. I am really delighted to hear that this year, the 10th year after making the decision to introduce food waste service, that it will be finally delivered. So it is now this year that we actually need to start committing to implementing a doorstep glass collection service. Yes, of course, people go down the road to drop their glass bottles into the bottle banks, but not everybody can do that. We need to start thinking now, before the government requires us, how we're going to deliver that. We also need to generate money to invest in our frontline services and street cleansing. And everybody does have mixed views about car parking charges, but actually when they see that it's being spent on frontline services, particularly in the city centre to protect services such as street cleaning and toilets, it's really important that people can see that they're getting value for their money. We've heard about the decision to close Northbrook. We'll discuss that later. But we feel that actually we can undertake a review of leisure services and look at how perhaps pricing can be used differently. So, for example, with Northbrook having an opportunity to focus being a small pool as a pool which focuses on teaching children to swim in a children's pool, reducing those costs could actually increase income. And we need some specialist advice. Being a Sport England project, we could actually bring people in to look at how we can improve those leisure services and generate more income to actually be closer to breaking even. We're very concerned about the arts and culture are not left behind in terms of these cuts and changes, and the Corn Exchange has really got an excellent programme of shows on at the moment. I don't know if you've been, but actually we feel that it can do better and generate more income. And the idea is to make sure that our services, which are discretionary, where appropriate, we can get them to generate the income they need, not only to survive, but to thrive. We found that there are some hangovers from Exeter City Living. There's another earmarked budget that needs to be brought back into frontline services. And any future development, we need to be absolutely clear where that money is coming from and how it will actually achieve what it is set out to do, rather than being just a general fund which just gets randomly spent, but we see no deliverables. And we've also proposed that we reduce the general fund surplus to 3.2 million, and so that we know what the reserves are going to cover. We know that we're going to need more money to support people who are sleeping rough, and we may know that the pay review may need to draw on some of those reserves. So this is the summary of our amendments. They've been very thought through, they've been tested out, they are considered to create a balanced budget, and I would hope that if you can't support all of them, maybe you will come and speak to us about supporting some of them after this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Mitchell, as the seconder of the motion, do you want to speak now or reserve your right till later?
Reserve our right till later.
Thank you. So we'll now open the debate on the Progressive Group amendment. After everyone has spoken on the amendment, then Councillor Moore has the right to respond, and then the leader has the right, as the original mover, to then respond as well. So, anyone would like to speak? Councillor Palmer first.
Is that working okay? Thank you very much. So I'm going to speak on HMOs. It was great to hear it mentioned, obviously no detail, so hopefully I'll be able to maybe flesh out some detail that could be considered by us all later on. So obviously local authorities are able to put into place different types of licensing. So obviously we've got mandatory licensing, but we can also have things like additional licensing and selective licensing, or actually a combination of all of those things, as many councils have. And actually they cover the wider rental sector, so the private rental sector. So that includes HMOs, privately rented accommodation, and privately rented PBSAs. And actually given the limited kind of financial contribution that privately owned PBSAs make, would be a great thing for them to make a contribution through a licence. So we can obviously set our own pricing structure for those licences. And for example, our current mandatory licence fee is actually quite significantly lower than other councils. And perhaps if there is nothing more that we feel that we can do urgently, we could actually just review where we are in line with other local authorities and whether we should be looking to increase at least our mandatory licence. Now, the income that's generated from those fees pays for all the resources needed. So pays for the service itself, the systems, inspections, the enforcement needed, and it obviously pays to continue to enhance the service and ensure that all landlords comply. So essentially, it pays for itself, and the benefits to the council officers' workloads, to tenants, the wider community, the well-being and economic benefits to the city just shouldn't be underestimated. Now, I know in the past there's been a kind of push in Exeter and other cities to actually have a look at voluntary accreditation schemes. Now, I carried out quite a lot of research into this, and actually what I discovered is that most councils actually close those down, because essentially you're preaching to the converted. You're already, you've got the good landlords, the landlords actually want to provide good quality homes. What those schemes don't allow you to do, unfortunately, is to tackle the really bad landlords that I'm pretty sure we all want to deal with in our city. So I also know that one of the other biggest concerns about these kinds of licensing schemes is that potentially there is a cost that could be passed on to tenants. So again, I came across quite a lot of evidence that local authorities have been using in their submissions to actually counter this, and that's from Coventry City Council, who carried out a huge piece of research between 2014 to 18, which looked at different authorities within the West Midlands and across England who actually had these kind of licences in place. What they actually discovered is that Coventry itself had the highest amount of rental increase, 19%. It was actually one of the only places that did not have one of these additional licensing things in place. So actually local authorities have been able to use this as very clear evidence to counter that argument. Now, Exeter, as we all know, is a great place to live, work and visit. However, the city is also known for its high housing costs, and that's partly due to the problems that are associated with a lack of affordable housing supply. So obviously lots of people have no choice but to look to the private rental sector to meet housing needs. Now, unfortunately, property conditions in the private rental sector are worse than other tenants. So a third of privately rented homes don't meet the government's decent home standard. 1 in 7 contains a hazard posing a serious danger to the health and safety of the renters. Those rates are much higher than owner-occupied and in the social rental sector. So there are obviously ongoing pressures within the housing market, and for many, and that includes a rising proportion of families. The only chance that they will have of a decent home is a properly managed and well-regulated HMO. Now, lots of councils across England have already recognised the ongoing challenges presented by the private rental sector, and in particular HMOs. They've actually introduced schemes that combine all 3 types of these licences incredibly effectively. And the Labour government also seems to agree that councils should have greater powers to operate local licensing schemes. In December last year, they removed the need to gain permission from the Secretary of State before being able to go ahead with selective licensing schemes. Now, the Renters Reform Coalition have really welcomed this step from the Labour government, and they said, this is great news. We've been long calling for the government to make it easier for councils to extend and set up landlord licensing schemes, which are an important line of defence for renters. Private renting is different everywhere. It's important that councils are empowered to tackle local problems and drive up standards. Now, access to decent and affordable housing is essential to support good health and well-being and a good quality of life. And local authorities have an obligation under the Housing Act 2004 to keep housing conditions in their area under review. They have an obligation to enforce certain statutory minimum standards in housing, and they have powers that they can use to do this. And if we think about our own strategic ambitions to improve people's quality of life in Exeter, we should be focused on utilising the tools and resources that we have to tackle poor housing standards in Exeter. So the Exeter vision states that we want to be a healthy and inclusive city. It talks about being a livable and connected city and a leading sustainable city. And the local plan states that the city exemplifies a mix of economic vitality, sustainable living, a high quality of life, a fantastic natural environment, and a real sense of place. As Exeter continues to grow, it is crucial it's not only preserved, but that we also enhance the quality of life of all who live, work, and visit here. Now, we know that HMOs are typically found in areas that are closer to our city centre and in close kind of connection to the university as well. Many of those are concentrated in my ward in St James and in the other city centre wards as well. So those areas have high numbers of older properties where poor conditions are more prevalent. Now, general analysis of energy performance certificate data shows a really strong correlation between HMO density and lower EPC ratings. Unlicensed HMOs are most likely to fall below expected EPC standards. A 2023 study shows that Exeter's residential buildings are not energy efficient. The average home energy rating in Exeter is just 63.4, that's a D rating. The average home energy rating in England and Wales is 79.3, that's a C rating. So there are other issues, obviously, that are associated with HMOs. And while the wider community may not be the people that are directly involved in paying or receiving rent, they do experience the impact of HMOs and that they have on their local kind of amenities. So general analysis, again, of environmental complaints data shows a direct link between high HMO areas and antisocial behaviour. And again, we all know that there is a clear link, that psychological link between a place that doesn't feel loved and looked after and cared for and antisocial behaviour. But again, it's the council officers that often have to pick this situation up. They'll be dealing with cleaning streets, dealing with antisocial behaviour, dealing with escalating complaints between residents, renters and landlords as well. So there are lots and lots of benefits to doing these schemes. So obviously, it raises the standards that we've already put in place through the mandatory licensing scheme. It makes sure that all of those individuals living in smaller HMOs or other types of rental property have the same right to living in a good standard of property as those who are currently in the mandatory licensed properties that we have in the city. It's obviously going to improve dramatically the well-being of residents who will have very limited choices normally over their housing. It improves the well-being of the neighbouring residents and the entire neighbourhood and community as well. It gives us a direct link with landlords. So again, the formation of that formal but direct kind of link between the landlord and the council means that we'll have a beneficial flow of information between the authority and the landlords themselves. It creates a really positive working partnership, and it's a really underrated benefit of licensing. So licensing also is a way of preempting all of those problems that so many of us will be dealing with actually as councillors, and that we see our officers having to deal with as well. So issues like damp, ventilation, all of those kind of ongoing issues that lead to poor living conditions. So finally, I'm not quite sure why we wouldn't want to do this. So why would we not want fewer homes that pose a risk to health and well-being? Why would we not want improved outcomes for families, for young people, for our vulnerable residents, for older residents? Why would we not want less officer time spent on having to deal with reactive issues that relate to HMOs, such as those environmental issues? Why would we not want lower carbon emissions, improved energy efficiency, and reduced fuel poverty? Why would we not want less antisocial behaviour? And why would we not want neighbourhoods that are more cohesive, attractive, and economically vibrant? Now look, I know it's your natural instinct to come and vote against any proposal made in an alternative budget. I don't care if you want to claim it, but I just believe that this is such a no-brainer, this is such a basic thing that we could be doing to improve this city. So ultimately, look at it like this. Okay, if we want people to come, live here, work here, study here, visit here, we need to make sure that we are an attractive city. It has huge economic benefits, as well as all of the other social and hidden benefits as well. So I would urge you this evening to make consideration to voting for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Banyard.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to highlight two elements of our alternative budget this evening. Some vital support for Citizens Advice Exeter and our investment in Exeter's climate action efforts. In their Q3 report, Citizens Advice Exeter tell us that they supported nearly 1,400 residents, securing over £750,000 in income gains and writing off £156,000 in debt. They, of course, provide critical help with benefits, debt, housing and legal issues to the most vulnerable in our community, and yet they are facing a funding crisis of their own. Their drop-in service is now open only 2 mornings a week. Due to this council's decision not to renew their funding, sadly, they have had to turn some people away. Without support, their service will shrink, leaving thousands in Exeter without access to advice that can prevent homelessness, financial hardship, and mental distress. Our proposal includes a costed £50,000 grant to help the Citizens Advice transition to a sustainable funding model, and thus ensuring they can continue their vital work. How are we going to do this? We're proposing a contract that recognises the financial benefits that Citizens Advice brings to the council and the city. By helping residents claim benefits, manage debt and keep up with rent and council tax payments, Citizens Advice reduce unpaid debts owed to the council. This means our grant isn't just a cost, it's an investment. It's an investment that helps both our community and our council's finances. In addition, let's change the subject. In addition, tackling the climate change crisis remains a priority for us, of course. Our budget proposes selling carbon literacy training sessions, which will generate £27,000 of income. A lot of this training has already been delivered to council staff. I've been on it. It's brilliant. It highlights the direct local impact local authorities can have on cutting carbon emissions and improving public health. And climate action is an investment in our city's future resilience. So by supporting these amendments, we're investing in Exeter and ensuring it remains a city that looks after its people and the planet. And I would urge all councillors to back our proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, so one thing we can definitely all agree on tonight is that we all really like Exeter, which is brilliant. Everybody says that it's a great place to live, work and visit, and I completely agree with that. Thank you, Vida, for saying all the great things that we do here, of which there are many, and that's really great. But there is more that I think we can do. I want to point out a few things in our budget proposal that we're trying to do. And I think that what it's clear that we're trying to achieve is that we're proposing a more joined up approach to government. As my colleague Councillor Banyard just spoke about, citizens' advice, it's an investment because the statutory services that we, the council, have to provide, we have to pay for those. It's just like when you get people more active, there's less of a burden on the NHS. It's that type of joined up government that we're proposing in our proposed budget. There's a couple of other examples of that. The biodiversity strategy, for example. There are developers who would pay if we can demonstrate where they can achieve biodiversity net gain. This is investment that we can reap for putting in place a policy which sets out what we have currently. We don't currently have a biodiversity plan, we don't currently have a biodiversity strategy. So how can we have anything to feed into it? It's just another example of joined up government. Public toilets in the city centre, antisocial behaviour. If you have public toilets and you maintain them, it creates a benefit to antisocial behaviour. It creates less antisocial behaviour. These are things that we want to see in our city. These are things that we can do something about by having more joined up government, which is what we're trying to propose in our budget. We're also trying to propose that we work more closely with communities. It's been really great this time. Thank you so much for bringing in a consultation, public consultation on the budget. That's something that I think lots of people in Exeter have really appreciated. That's really excellent. These types of things can go further. This was the first year we've had it. I hope that we're going to be having it every year going forward. Rather than moving to close the leisure centre, we believe that we can undertake a leisure review, and that this would be a way of working with our communities more to cope with this funding crisis that local authorities are facing. We know that there are really difficult decisions, but we've created a costed budget that can achieve these things. And the third thing that I think is really, really clear is in this state of funding crisis that we're in the state of the climate crisis that we're in, which we have declared in this council, the only way we solve these problems is if we work together. So I hope that you'll see that the proposed budget that we've come up with addresses the problems that we accept that we all face, but aims to provide some solutions to it. And I hope that you will really, every member in this chamber tonight, will really consider these things quite seriously and vote for them. And if you don't vote for them tonight, please, nevertheless, let's keep working together. That's the only way we solve these terrible problems that we're all facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Wettenall.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wanted to speak to our amendment 1.c, which could be just lost in the, I think it's to undertake a review of projects with funds that are earmarked by SIL and Section 106 funds. And just in case people are not aware, there are funds sitting around, some of which were allocated a very long time ago, nearly a decade, with a complete lack of clarity about whether those funds will actually ever get picked up. There are funds that are just colleagues from Priory Ward will know, an email's just come in from the one for community hub saying what's happening about Section 106 money that's been held for, again, the best part of 8 years, I think it is. So again, it's rather like Councillor Palmer said, why would we not do that? At the moment, we allocate still in Section 106 with no time stamp on it. It can be there forever. This just doesn't make sense in a time of financial constraints. So again, really, why would we not do that? And I would urge you to consider it. It's a very uncontroversial and positive thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westmore. Councillor Mitchell, you indicated.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And could I thank all my colleagues for their excellent contributions so far, which have been highly illuminating. I think it's a welcome to all of us to this. So this is the main political theatre event of the year in many respects, the construction of the council budget. Sadly, at times, these debates turn into an exercise of political point scoring. I'm not, to assure Councillor Violet, I am not attempting to do that this evening. We've got to find an agreement or way forward. We're discussing three options for the next financial year, those proposed by the Labour group, those proposed by the Progressive group, and those, thankfully, from the Conservative group. So we have three options before us. At the end of this evening, there will be a roll call vote, and I don't think I need a crystal ball at this stage to know what the outcome of that will be. Between the three options, there is much agreed common ground. The opportunity to achieve additional income at no cost to the council taxpayer is a no-brainer, and all of us have done that in our calculations. This year, we were offered by the officers a menu with prices and asked to select options that added up to the required reductions. Both the Progressive group and the Conservative group have gone, shall I say, more a la carte. They've gone off the menu and thought of other ideas that could be added to the list. Now, whilst I see very much from the Labour menu, they stuck to the fixed price menu and have worked through that one. Saving the paper. I support the recommendation, obviously put forward by my own group. I also support many of the points made in the Conservative proposals. There are also elements of the Labour proposals that I'm quite happy to support. But sadly, these annual events are structured in no way to bring a consensus forward so we can actually come to this council meeting with an agreed budget, which all of us have signed up to. And we're all aware at the end of the day, even I can count, no majority of members belong to one side and not to the other side. So at the end of the day, we know what the result is. But I just sadly wish there was a methodology whereby we could sit down, the amount of time and effort put in by all sides to produce these ideas and put them forward at an earlier stage and see if we can get a consensus so that when we come to this meeting, we have something all of us can sign up to the way forward. In regard to the proposals put forward by my group, I wish just to speak on two of the items. First, will not come as a surprise, is the citizens' advice. I brought this matter to scrutiny and was pleased that we had an excellent scrutiny debate, and we've got a proposal to the executive, and within the speed of light almost, it has been considered by the executive and has come back. The cost of living crisis, rising energy prices as of today, rising council tax bills, and the housing crisis in the private rented sector in Exeter have not magically gone away because we've elected a Labour government. For many, the first port of call, when it becomes for them a personal crisis, is citizens' advice. Whilst online and telephone calls help, it is often that person-to-person contact that provides the help and reassurance that is required. And I can speak from personal experience on that. The Labour budget offers a rent-free period of office space owned by the council. The CA suggests that is worth approximately £18,000 a year to them, but they must still pay all the associated service charges of running an office. I would contend that even if they didn't take that offer up, it is highly unlikely that we would rent that space out in the current economic situation of empty, vacant office space in Exeter. Exeter was the only council that contributes to Exeter's CA this year that ceased direct funding. I note, for example, yesterday, that North Devon District Council, not run by the Labour Party, I won't mention who runs them, have agreed to increase by £7,000 their contribution to their local CA, making their new total 52,000. And those are supposed to be our core relations in local government reorganisation. My second contribution relates to the establishment of a scrutiny officer post. A good council is only as good as its scrutiny processes. Scrutiny acts as a driver to improve performance and holds those empowered to account. It also acts as a sounding board for issues raised by our citizens. Scrutiny has improved in recent years, and I know the leader and deputy leader support the changes that have recently been introduced. I believe we are, just listen to this, I believe we are the most important district council in Devon. I'll stick with Devon. We are ambitious and often punch well above our weight. That's not a literal one, don't forget anything inside. We do punch above our weight. But there is a need for professional support to ensure that we set a standard that other district councils in Devon will seek to emulate. And I believe having a post of A, which we are fully funded, of a scrutiny officer will help us to do it. And I'd like to thank my colleague, Councillor Catherine Reid, in regard to the work on improving the budget oversight process. But as I said earlier, I don't think we're there yet on getting a consensual approach to constructing a budget. And that was with all the support of the other members of the Scrutiny Programme Board. I know our proposal for a planning enforcement officer was finally accepted after several attempts at previous budgets. Sadly, this time is not on our side. We're going out of business in 2028, possibly. Whilst I understand the politics of competing budgets and political theatre, I do hope the administration will take on board some of the suggestions we have put forward this evening. Finally, we do need to bear in mind that the local government landscape in Devon is going to change. There will be city elections in 2026, elections to the new unitary authorities potentially in 2027. A new town council might well emerge, or city council, a third tier level council will emerge for Exeter, or even parts of Exeter, we do not know, like at UDI, Exwood and St Thomas. But at the same time, we have to pick up the bills for all this reorganisation, and we are told by central government it is business as usual. This is in an organisation that is fully stretched at the moment and under-resourced. Whilst the bins will continue to be collected and normal services will continue, forward planning by this council becomes problematic because so many of our plans are 3 or 5 years ahead. We haven't got that luxury anymore. As we look forward or not to these changes, I just pose the thought that as current members of this authority, what do we want to be our legacy as Exeter City Council? To be carried forward, we would wish, into the new council. Because I think we have to bear in mind, many of the councils, our neighbouring councils, operate slightly differently than us for historical reasons. Is that legacy going to be keeping in-house leisure? Is that legacy going to be an in-city property portfolio that is maintained by the council? A continuing large HRA, which others do not have. And I would say it, even though I often put out shots in the office, a superior style of recycling that other authorities do not use in our neighbouring areas. Yes, no doubt. We'll wait for the next chart, we'll put it in. Irrespective of the vote this evening, I look forward to working as a member of an all-Exeter, all-party team, seeing through the remaining budgets that are left to us, but ensuring that our legacy, hopefully, is protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, and now call upon Councillor Moore to sum up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, colleagues who have spoken. Councillor Palmer has made a very compelling case for a piece of work this year, and I hope that we can actually take up that proposal on working on bringing in a mandatory licensing scheme for HMOs, which will really benefit our residents. Thank you to Councillor Banyard about the importance of the community, of the citizens' advice, particularly in St David's. We have a disproportionate number of residents, unfortunately, who need their services, and it's really, their value is greater than the price of any grant that we can give them. And you're quite right, we need to double down on our efforts on climate action. £27,000 isn't going to go far, but it's a start. I agree completely, Councillor Reid, that we need to have a joined-up approach, and we need to pay attention to the detail, particularly as Councillor Mitchell has said, coming towards the end, we need to be very careful of the funds that we have custodianship for and spend them wisely. And some comments I observed about when we talked about the toilets. We've specifically mentioned the toilets because, again, this is a service that is really valued by our communities. And we do need to highlight the concerns that we have about there's no city centre toilets which are open at night, so people are sleeping rough. I don't need to finish the sentence, do I? We know what happens. Either they'll make themselves ill from taking Imodium. It's really not on. Councillor Eccleston, thank you very much for highlighting your concerns about the spending on community facilities and monies that we have set aside. We really need to get those projects going so that we don't use those funds. And of course, Councillor Mitchell, a great speech, thank you. I think it's really important that we talk about this process about working well together. Now, the opposition, the ruling group have sat quietly and listened. Sorry, slipped there. Maybe temporary. The ruling group have sat very silently and listened, and I appreciate your politeness. Maybe it's politeness, or maybe you have nothing to say. Maybe that we should be having more dialogue, as has been pointed out on our discussions, because there are things, and it has been stressed by a number of my colleagues, about working together. And we're serious about this, and we look forward to future discussion over the year, because it can't be left every year to the last, to the meeting to actually have these discussions. And I would welcome further detailed discussions, particularly as my council colleague, Councillor Beast, has been trying to facilitate over the year a great effort. So we propose this alternative budget to you, and we know that you won't be allowed to vote for it, but we still commend it to you, and welcome further discussion after the meeting if you don't feel you can support it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Bialik, you have the right to reply.
Just to say, I have listened intently to, made a number of observations, and I do believe that in the debate on, if this fails to get through on the debate that follows, many of these issues will be picked up and responded to, and some of the ideas. So all things come to those who wait a little bit.
Yes, Councillor Mitchell, you're calling for a name vote, by any chance?
On a point of order, yes, of clarification. Could I ask whether Standing Order 727 applies for a roll call on
No,
the
you'll
amendment,
need
or
to-
only on the substantive?
Only on the substantive, so if you want to name vote, you'll need 6 others to stand up for you.
Oh, excellent.
There we go.
Exercise of your board. Thank you.
No worries. So therefore, we'll move to a named vote on the progressive group amendments as set out in the paper, and I'll hand over to Mark Devlin to do the roll call.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Please, when I call your names, can you please state clearly if you're for, against, or abstaining? Councillor Alcock. Thank you. Councillor Asfashion. Councillor Banyard.
For.
Councillor Begley.
Against.
Councillor Bennett.
For.
Councillor Bialik.
Against.
Councillor Ellis-Jones.
Against.
Councillor Fall.
Against.
Councillor Fulham?
For.
Councillor Hay?
For.
Councillor Harding?
Against.
Councillor Holland, I believe, is left. Councillor Jobson?
Against.
Councillor Ketchin?
For.
Councillor Knott?
Against.
Councillor Miller-Bone?
Against.
Councillor Mitchell? Not Mike Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Moore? Councillor Palmer?
100% for.
Councillor Parkhouse? Councillor Patrick?
Against.
Councillor Poll?
Against.
Councillor Reid?
For.
Councillor Rees?
For.
Councillor Ralston?
Against.
Councillor Snow?
Against.
Councillor Vizard?
Against.
Councillor Wetternall? Sorry, say again, sorry. Oh, thank you. Councillor Ruth Williams? Sorry, thank you. Sorry, I was not hearing it. Councillor Wood? Councillor Wright?
Against.
Thank you. Just allow me a moment to count. That's 19 against Lord Mayor, and that's and 11 for, so that amendment has not been carried.
Thank you, Mark. We will now move on to the alternative budget amendment from the Conservative group, and I would like to call upon Councillor Jobson to propose their amendments.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I understand that, as you can see, there is difficulty, but I do have a second.
So I believe Councillor Mitchell has agreed to do
Second
that.
for the sake of debate.
Yes, people would have noticed Councillor Holland needed to leave early, so that's the reason.
Sorry, just can I ask about the, I think there was 12 people that voted for the amendment, not 11. Councillor Hay, those in favour?
There was 12 in favour.
There's only 11, there's 10 from the Progressive group and Councillor Haig, that makes 11. Is that correct? So, sorry, Councillor Jobson, please continue.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and secondly, thank you very much to Councillor Mitchell. I had a vision of my budget amendment sitting languishing like some lost literary masterpiece in a golden fruit curling at the edges, unread and unloved, so I'm very grateful to him. Reading the early reports as the year progressed as to the state of the finances and the amount of money that had to be saved was also somewhat akin to something adjacent to a literary yo-yo as figures went up and down. But we are all aware now that the final target was 3.5 million that had to be saved, together, of course, with the shortfall in the national insurance contribution, which is just over another $500,000. And in addition to that, I make no secret of the fact that I wanted to see a grant given to the Citizens Advice Bureau, so I added that 50,000 to the target before working the sums out. And so our budget and proposed amendments is a balanced budget, and the amendments to the budget and the savings needed are all funded. I'm not going to repeat them all here. They are all in the motion that's put, the amendment that's put before you. And indeed, there is a synergy with
some of the proposals made by the Labour group itself as to the budget. There are, though, some differences, and it is those that I will concentrate on. We do require, in my view, some additional income to be raised by some organisations. It is absolutely right what Councillor Bardick said, that the leisure services are doing well. But we have to remember that every year, St Sidwell's Point is costing £671,000 in loan repayments. Whilst St Sidwell's Point are doing very well on matching their revenue, they are not making any contribution to the cost of those loan repayments. And in my view, there should be a 5-year programme to improve that. You cannot raise all those costs at once. And so I would ask that St Sidwell's Point look at raising an additional £30,000 worth of income during the current year. We have first-class carbon literacy training programme, and we can raise, it seems, an estimated £20,000 per annum by selling such training sessions. There remains a question to be answered about whether PBSAs are all signed up to and paying trade waste commercial waste charges. If not, I think they should be. I'm talking about the non-university owned or managed PBSAs because they are in a different category. No figure has been put in the budget for that, but I do think that we should investigate. PBSAs contribute nothing as a unit to this city. They don't pay business rates. They don't pay other costs. Many of them don't even pay corporation tax because their businesses are based elsewhere in the world, in Guernsey, quite a number of them. So I do think we should look at that. PBSAs should be paying their fair share. With regret, I have also come to the conclusion, my group also came to the conclusion that we would have to seriously look at closing the Northbrook pool. I make it absolutely clear that that needs to be done after consultation to see if there is a way, and that was said in any event, so I won't repeat it, but I want to make it clear that I'm not just saying close it tomorrow. If any other money, for instance, trade waste, could be found that could subsidise it for a little longer while we look at a way of making it pay, I'd be up for that. Where I fall out most is over car parks. A lot of people need to drive into the city. A lot of people particularly want to drive in the evening to enjoy a show or go for a meal. A lot of them find the current perhaps unfair reputation, I think indeed unfair reputation the city centre has of being a bit of a scary place in the dark, is unfortunate, but that is the view. That is not a reliable bus service from many parts of the city. So I do think we've got to be very careful about keep on hiking up parking charges, whether that's by just changing the central locations of some and adding to them, or by adding on the Ringo fee or whatever. And I think we should look at ways of making money out of the car parks that we have by commercial activity, Eurocar or storage, DPD type storage facilities. I understand that could raise about 50,000 per annum. Sunday is the quietest day for parking. There is a general view that parking in Exeter is too expensive, and it is acting as a deterrent for people who would otherwise come into the city. So let's put that to the test. If we reduced parking charges on a Sunday to, say, £2.50 for 4 hours, so a full day would be £5, it's hoped that that would encourage better use. Hope that that would increase the Sunday income in parking charges by a minimum of £50,000. But I have again not made any allowance for the current year because it is plucking a figure out of the air in so many ways. Also proposing a modest reduction in the grant received by the Phoenix. The Phoenix is increasingly operated as a commercial venture. The number of gigs that are held there, the number of other activities that go there, They are receiving £51,000 in rent relief. I see no reason to change that. But a reduction from £57,000 to £37,000 in the grant funding, so a modest reduction, to take into account their increasing commercial activities, I think is reasonable and proportionate. So we needed to find the funding for the grant to the CAB. CAB provides an essential service to many hundreds, if not thousands, of residents who are facing a crisis in their lives. And to me, it is a significant and important factor. They must be able to continue with the work that they currently do without risk of having to close. And for the avoidance of doubt, the grant of 50,000 that I'm proposing is in addition to any of the reliefs currently sort of worked out by Council and by Alec with CAB. I think I've talked about car parking already. I hope that not only will it encourage people to come into the city, but it will benefit the retail and hospitality sectors who are struggling at the moment. I've talked about St Sidwell's Point. CIL charging is another area where we could increase income. We do not charge developers who seek to build co-living units at the same rate as PBSAs. Can't understand why not, because they're virtually identical offering. And developers who wish to build housing for couples and families, and particularly social and affordable housing, should be encouraged. This will clearly have to go through any necessary consultation to raise the CIL rate on co-living, and therefore unlikely to be introduced until Q3 in this financial year. And so a modest increase of £55,000 is proposed for the current year. With a balanced budget like that, we are doing two things. We're giving the CAB additional income so that it can continue. And we are trialling, encouraging people to come into the city by a reduction on Sunday car parking charges. I beg to move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak, or is that your...
Yes, I want to adjust the comments I made prior to knowing that I was seconding the motion, so it might come as a surprise. They might not be as supportive as you would wish, but first of all, welcome the costed suggestions from the Conservative group. To have a range of opinions and views on the issues facing the city, I think is welcome. And as I said before, it's a shame that the process doesn't allow them to come to some consensus a month, 6 weeks ago. Of course, we're on the same page regarding help for the citizens of Ice. As we have suggested, and I think is within our proposals, I think there is a need for a full review of leisure services to ascertain the best way forward before individual cuts are made in regard to facilities. It is an interesting point that Councillor Jobson raises in regard to hypothecating capital funding, instead of just being paid out of the general fund, being allocated to the service that receives the money. It's interesting, it's one thing that works, I understand, in HRA. They have to cover their own costs through their charges. It would be an interest to get both a legal and a commercial answer on whether that would apply to other services that local authorities run, in particular discretionary services like leisure services. We are in agreement in regard to still charging. In fact, I'm going to go into the inquiry and try to present some evidence in regard to that versus PBSA, the differential there. Like Councillor Johnson, I do agree we do need to investigate revenue sources where property either contributes business rates or council tax to us as an authority. Again, this is something that brought me into this council chamber many years ago. I think we would all agree that we need clarity from government, irrespective of the colour of the composition of that government, about what compensation, if any, we receive in regard to council tax exemption properties. If you ask the finance officer, he say you cannot discern it from the grant system. If you go to the select committee of the House of Commons, you get an interesting answer from a former Conservative minister, or Conservative minister at that time, saying there is no support. We have got, and there are other cities that are in a similar situation, smaller university cities that have got a disproportionate number of L exemptions on their register, and it is unclear what compensatory income comes from the government to compensate for that loss of council tax. And I believe it's something we ought to, as a council, with others, to investigate and get clarity on that. So I thank Councillor Jobson for her proposals, say some of which I support, others I have some slight reservations about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Moore?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Johnson, for your proposals. And as you know, we very much do agree on the issues around the community infrastructure levy rates in relation to co-living. However, I do particularly want to talk about the proposal for cutting the National Portfolio Organisations grants. It needs to be done. No, I know you're not doing this. I'm talking about the Conservatives' proposal. But I want to make a really important point. That is, if that sort of rushing in to making decisions, cuts to voluntary organisations, leads to the unintended consequences or maybe the deliberate consequences, but we have spent all year discussing the impact on citizens' advice. As one of a number of the national portfolio organisations receiving money from the Arts Council, the council's match funding it provides is a really important part of that grant package. It is always voluntary groups and particularly arts that get cut first. The Phoenix provides important services for young people and hosts and supports many organisations which provide vital mental health support services. And I received a very sad email today from somebody who was quite distressed that another social enterprise in the city had closed and then had provided mental health support. So we need to value the contribution that our voluntary sector and social enterprises make. And the Phoenix has a building which the council owns, and I think over this next year, as the council moves towards its closure, we think about discussing with all those organisations that are based in council-owned properties about what they think the future of their buildings should be in terms of investing in them. Do they want an asset transfer? How might they best carry on? We need to cultivate and value the relationships that we have with our voluntary community sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Reid?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Councillor Jobson, and thank you for standing in to second that Councillor Mitchell. I think that's a great example of working together to enable all voices to be heard. So I really welcome this. There is lots, as my colleagues have said, there's lots to support in the Conservative budget amendment. Of course, the funding of citizens' advice, we're in favour of that. Of course, the suggestions around PBSA and the SIL for co-living. Also the trade waste, I think that's a really excellent observation in the budget, something that we perhaps can do something about. Where we don't completely see eye to eye is in terms of the car parking. Myself personally, I completely understand your point, Councillor Jobson, lots of people need to drive in. I completely understand your point that lots of people perhaps feel that they don't wish to walk into the city centre of an evening. And I completely agree that we don't have a good enough bus service. But I think that going down the route of enabling more car driving is, to me, not something that in my conscience I can support, knowing that we are facing a climate crisis and we need to not encourage more use of fossil fuels. But also, I think that you make a very good point that car parks could be used to generate more income for the city. And it's something that if we, and I hope we do, have a more joined up collaborative process for setting the budget for the council. I hope that we do put in place processes which enable consensus to be reached, and then perhaps we could discuss different options for generating income from car parks, like, for example, e-bike storage, which if we provided secure e-bike storage is something that would be a huge value to people in the city. It's something that would help drive forward our net zero agenda that we say is so important, and it's something that could also generate income for the council. I personally think that it's really valuable that we have these different proposals tonight, and while there is much in this one to support, the car parking means that I'm not going to be able to support it, but I think it's really welcome that we discuss it, and I hope that going forward we can do this process earlier, and hopefully we can, as we said, Councillor Mitchell, reach consensus tonight in the budget meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Before I move on to Councillor Palmer, that's next, this is for the benefit of people maybe watching online and also in the room. There are two councillors stood up at the moment, and I would just like to say that I've given them consent to do so. So I just wanted to make that clear to everyone, those who are watching. But Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. It was just a really brief kind of point I wanted to make to speak in favour of keeping Northbrook Pool open, or at least to make sure that we have a really proper consultation with St James's School. So you may not know if you don't have kids at St James's or haven't had, but they're a really frequent user of the pool. So they have an elective, it's a fantastic kind of thing, every Wednesday for that entire afternoon. All of the children at St James actually get the opportunity to participate in an activity for 2 hours. And swimming at Northbrook is one of those. So actually, my son's doing it at the moment. He's having an amazing kind of time. And actually, for lots of young people, learning to swim is actually much harder than it perhaps used to be. I know when we were looking for swimming lessons, when my son was younger, they were actually really difficult to come by. And certainly very difficult to get in the evening if you were working. And actually, so many young people just do not have the opportunity to learn to swim. Swimming lessons are really unaffordable as well. So this opportunity that the school provides, and it is an area, it's got a really mixed demographic, but actually there are lots of young people that attend St James from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. I actually think it's a really important resource. They wouldn't actually be able to do this. They wouldn't have time to go to one of the other pools, and I'm pretty sure the pools are pretty full anyway, but Northbrook kind of gives them the opportunity to literally walk from school to the pool. It gives them an hour and a half kind of dedicated kind of opportunity to learn actually what's a really important and kind of pretty vital life skill. So I completely understand that we need to make savings, but actually don't take something away from such an important resource away from such a big group of young people. And if we do feel that we need to do that, please make sure that St James's and perhaps some of the other kind of schools that are in the immediate vicinity are kind of key stakeholders that we want to consult with.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Johnson, would you like to sum up? Or any other speakers?
I think you've probably heard enough from me, Lord Mayor. I've put the budget amendment and...
Councillor Bialik, you have the right to reply if you wish.
Once again, many of the points that have been raised will be drawn out in the debate presently will then.
Thank you. And we'll now move to the vote then on this item. So all those in favour, please show. That's one in favour on that. All those against?
That's, sorry, Councillor Tony, I can't see you. Thank you very much. So that's Lord Mayor, is 29 against. So
Abstentions?
oh, sorry, there was against abstention. That has not been carried.
Okay, so we've debated both the sets of amendments, which have both fallen, so we'll now return back to the original motion and budget, and I'll start the debate on that. So would anyone like to speak? Lord Mayor?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to have a moment to talk about reserves. Reserves help councils even out cash flow. This is a very sensible business practice, one that all businesses that want to stay in business follow. An article about a year ago in The Guardian pointed out the fact that those councils that have gone into special measures have, in the 2 to 3 years prior, gone against Section 151 officers' advice and reduced their reserve levels to a critical level. Councils often come under pressure to use reserves to plug ongoing budget gaps, but in every case where they have gone against the 151 officer, that council, regardless of its political colour, has gone into special measures. I will quote now from the LGA website: reserves can only be spent once, and using reserves to plug ongoing budget gaps is not the solution. I note that the budget proposed by the leader not only keeps the reserve, but actually increases it in line with the 151 officers' recommendations. I find this budget to be balanced, reasonable, and in these unfortunate circumstances of having to make such significant cuts, very well put together. I recommend it.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I have Councillor Vizard, Councillor Parkhouse and Councillor Harding so far. Anyone else? Thank you. So, Councillor Vizard.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, to say, as the leader has said, that this is a very challenging budget, given the savings that are required and are incredibly substantial, and something we would all prefer and we didn't have to do this evening. So that's a given. And I do understand the desire to pick out particular elements and preferences. But this party, the ruling group, is making decisions in the interests of the whole community as best it can, the resources it has, and with the need to be resourceful in terms of its budget and decision making. We also need to be realistic, where continued funding is not credible or financially sustainable, however painful this may be, and always subject to further public consultation, as has been rightly said. I welcome our commitment to the net zero budget, the only party this evening that has actually tabled a specific commitment on this, and to our team of brilliant officers, and it's their expertise rather than seeking, I think, strategies and consultants externally on this issue that is the way forward. We all agree, and I'm pleased to hear it, that selling our carbon literacy training is the right thing to do, but we can only do that if we invest in our fantastic team of officers who have the expertise in-house. I won't repeat the leader's references to some of the achievements of our net zero and communities commitments, other than just to highlight the grant funding that we are continuing with and that has such a positive impact on our communities across the city, and that shouldn't be forgotten. So that's city grants and ward grants, as well as the community lottery, all of which make an incredibly valuable contribution and involve our community groups, organisations, local projects, and residents across the entire city. And I welcome the public consultation that will be coming forward towards the end of the year on our community funding. That's another good example of consulting. I think it was mentioned earlier by another member, the importance of discussing the way forward with the community, with the public, which we will certainly do. On Citizens Advice Exeter, I want to very much echo the comments of others this evening on the incredibly valuable work they do. We have, many of us, met with the Chief Executive and Chair and welcome that reset of relations. They will have my full support going forward with all of their efforts to ensure that they have financial stability going forward. And what I do welcome very much is the Council's offer to provide a rent-free year of office space at the Civic Centre, which is in addition to the business rates relief, which the Council provides, and to the transition grant that has already been offered in this financial year. So already we have given them a substantial transition grant to the current contract. And for the current independent money advice and advocacy service that they currently have a contract for, which supports housing casework and contracted by a homelessness team. So lots of ongoing work there. Just turning briefly to the biodiversity issue. There is a current vacancy to replace the City Development, Ecology and Biodiversity Principal Officer role. And that, while that would ideally be full-time, I gather that it is it's going to be recruited on a part-time basis, and there's limits to that in terms of responsibilities for taking on biodiversity strategy. However, the net zero team does have some capacity in terms of supporting the development of our biodiversity strategy, and we already are in discussions with the planning and city development team in terms of sustainability relationships and biodiversity strategy. So that's something we can take forward. Absolutely, something I believe in, and we will discuss further. And in terms of the rest of the biodiversity across the council, we know that it is a key part of our Exeter treescape management and our cultural strategy. Park strategy takes a similar approach, as does the Harbour Board, in terms of setting the biodiversity agenda for the harbour. And so biodiversity is managed as a key part of balancing everyday use of operational land. That being the case, and I think the Parks and Open Spaces team does not feel it's necessary for biodiversity strategy to be developed specifically for the operational land. So just to draw that all together, I very much support the budget that's been put forward by my group this evening. I will be supporting that. Difficult though some of these decisions are, will be lots of further discussions with the public and with communities going forward, and I will be voting for that this evening. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vizard. Just to let you know who's on the list, so Councillor Parkhouse, Councillor Harding, Councillor Ruth Williams, Councillor Miller-Bowen, Councillor Fole, Councillor Wood, Councillor Alcock, and Councillor Moore, and Councillor Reid. So, Councillor Parkhouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll try and get through this without coughing. So, Lord Mayor, first and foremost, I'd like to thank all the officers and executive members who have spent hours, days, weeks, months of their time creating this council's annual budget. Not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. As members are aware, we have a legal responsibility each year to set the balanced budget, and I'm pleased to see that we're able to do so this year whilst maintaining a prudent and important reserve for the future unknowns, as well as a generous offering to residents in the city, despite maintaining one of the lowest levels of council tax in the country. As the leaders already outlined, our district council is very ambitious in our offering to residents, including an inspiring cultural offer, including our beloved museum, important leisure offering, contributing to our goal of getting more people active, beautiful green spaces and parks, which contribute so much to make Exeter a great place to live, but unsurprisingly fuel the need to build more homes to meet the demand of those wishing to build their lives in Exeter. As Chair of Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee, I must also comment and thank officers for supporting greater scrutiny of the annual budget setting process this year, and a particular thank you to the Section 151 officer for the extra hours he's dedicated to supporting this added layer of accountability into our council process by attending even more meetings, sometimes long into the evening on this topic, months in advance, not last minute, as others might have suggested. I warmly welcome the inclusion of a public consultation in our budget setting process. This public consultation concluded last month, and it's one that I look forward to scrutinising further in future customer-focused scrutiny committees. Not to spoil this future scrutiny committee meeting, I want to comment briefly on the results, that I was glad to see our council priorities are aligned with resident priorities in Exeter. They reflect the compassion of Exeter residents wanting to support individuals on the cusp of homelessness, as well as their forward-thinkingness, the nature of the residents surveyed wanting to secure more affordable, clean energy. Another important contribution of customer-focused scrutiny was a recommendation after hearing from council officers and citizens' advice at our November meeting that the executive revisit options for working with citizens' advice Exeter, with the aim of reducing premises expenses. And I'm very happy this evening to hear from our leader that these conversations have not only happened, but have been fruitful. I can't let it pass without commenting that we've managed to achieve all this in scrutiny without a scrutiny officer. Lord Mayor, I hope you'll indulge me as I venture down memory lane and comment on two specific areas I previously devoted a lot of time and energy to. The first was my role as previous climate and ecology crisis portfolio holder. I'm glad to see that our net zero team will benefit by the car park at the bus station in a meanwhile use for us that uses funds to benefit our city's net zero aspirations. On the topic of car parks, it makes sense for us to explore commercial opportunities such as setting up car washes to generate additional revenue streams to make better use of these council-owned spaces. And I'm excited to see that we will be exploring these. I also applaud the Chamber's consensus that we've reached on supporting the potential income of offering carbon literacy sessions, a skill that's been acquired by the Net Zero team through our council's climate leadership, and that will contribute to our city's sustainability goals. On the subject of sustainability, this government inherited a mess of legislation that could mean local authorities require households to have up to 7 bins to deal with their household waste and recycling. In Exeter, I'm happy that we're not in this position, and I'm glad to see that the new Labour government has now committed to simplifying the recycling system in England, and I'm happy to hear that as a Labour-led council, we are continuing to roll out our food waste, as the leader described, something that will help residents with their own waste and net zero goals. Lord Mayor, my second trip down memory lane is as the previous portfolio holder for leisure. Speaking as such, I know how hard the leisure service have worked to get Northbrook pool usage up over the years alongside ward members. But sadly, we're a victim of our own success with populace St Sylvain's Point, a mere 10-minute cycle away in the heart of the city. So while it's a hard decision to make, and as others have noted, it will require a proper consultation, if necessary, the closure of the pool will be a cost-saving measure due to its underuse. In fact, looking at the public consultation of this annual budget, this was one of the highest, this was one of the most popular choices in saving money that residents responded to reduce the subsidy of our 6 council-run leisure sites. And I'm thrilled to hear the good figures of our other leisure services and know that these numbers translate into many success stories, as we've already heard: children learning to swim, disabled residents engaging in rehabilitation, and residents looking to improve their lives by increasing their activity level. I fully support this budget, and I urge council members to support it alongside us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parkhouse. Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We are meeting here tonight. We have to make a budget with savings. So, in view of the fact we have to do that, I was, and the fact that families are ever more stretched with cash, yet we're often told about how important it is to keep active. I was pleased to see that we're managing to keep a leisure centre and swimming pool open inside the river, and hearing tonight as well that there'll be a proper consultation in closing any other pools. It's also it's a good thing, I think, that both the fact we have the leisure centres either side of the river, that they're affordable and easy for families to use. And my second point as well is that in a similar vein, in that the playing fields throughout the city and down in the quay, where families often go for activities during the weekend or evenings, all have toilets as well. I think it's good that we've managed to keep all the public toilets we have at the moment open, so that people are able to go out and as families, and I think those things do encourage people to go out. So yeah, I'm pleased about those things, and I will be supporting the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harding. Councillor Ruth Williams.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and apologies for my voice. I'm a bit cold, so I don't want to breathe on over there. We're all here together to, in the best interests of our residents. So we know it's a very, very tough job that we've got to save this amount of money. So none of us are going to be very happy with what we end up with. So we're all trying to do the best job that we can. There are things in the opposition proposals, I think, that we've already had some reassurance, for example, from Councillor Vizard on the biodiversity post that was suggested. And just to add to that, like I said, I know that Councillor Reid said that developers come along and they don't know what to do with that, with biodiversity net gain. I think that was being really unfair to our planners, because that's precisely the advice that was being given by the Ecology and Biodiversity Officer that was poached by Devon County Council, and that's the vacancy that's there at the moment. So hopefully you are reassured. The other thing that perhaps you're not aware of, Green members in particular, is that there's a Habitat Regulation Executive Committee which has officers and councillor members from both Exeter City Council, East Devon and Teambridge, working as a partnership. Okay, so the partnership comments you're making, we are doing it. So perhaps if you'd like to come and have a chat with me, I can update you a bit more information. And currently we're looking at the South East Devon draft mitigation strategy. So a lot of work going on that you may not be aware of. A couple of other things that I was quite amused at Councillor Mitchell's comment about a superior style of recycling. Well, perhaps I'll give you a little bit more information about that. Yes, it would be great for us to have doorstep glass collection, but we are looking to be a well-run council. We can't be throwing away money when it isn't necessary. So, for example, with doorstep glass collection, if you actually do the calculation, the additional amount of glass, because we're already doing brilliantly well with our glass banks, and we do a comparison with other councils looking at how much glass is going into the black bin waste. There's analysis done. It was done. The last lot that was done was the year last October, and Exeter were doing nearly as well as the other districts which offer doorstep recycling. So doorstep recycling of glass does not address, still doesn't address the amount of glass going into black bin waste. So we probably increase the amount of glass we collect by, or recycle by about 1%. You may not be aware that the resale value of that glass is very, very low. So we're unlikely to make hardly any additional money from that to what we're already doing. And that's certainly not going to cover anything like the 2.8 million that you've been suggesting that we splash out on getting new vehicles and the actual containers. So it's just, you know, it's a non-starter at the moment. But the other thing is, if the Labour government then decides that doorstep recycling is going to be standard across England, what they will have to do is to provide some money for the transitional funding of introducing this additional service. So you know, it makes sense to wait because we could get some more money. Certainly haven't got the money to, you know, nearly 3 million quid to throw away on this. And also, I think your calculations were something like 0.8 million annual running costs, and it would be partly funded by the sale of glass. Well, you know, that's going to be peanuts, so I'm really sorry, but that's a non-starter. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the suggestion about compulsory City Council trade waste charging to private PBSA and possibly co-living, which was supported by Councillor Reid. Well, the comments I've had are the Council has a legal duty under Schedule 2 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990 to collect from PBSAs in the same way as we collect from all other domestic properties. To charge for this would be unlawful. Sorry about that, Councillor Johnson. I don't think you support that if you knew. Yeah, the PBSAs may pay for additional collections from us or any other trade waste provider. We cannot mandate this is from ECT, as this again would be unlawful. So that's an absolute non-starter as well. So I hope that sort of explains some of the, you know, perhaps the opposition, if you came and talked to the appropriate executive member, rather than telling us to go and talk to you, you can actually find out more detail and more information before making proposals that are really non-starters. So I commend our budgets. I'll certainly be supporting it, Leader. And thank you very much to all the officers that put in so much effort and work into helping us put these proposals together. And I think it has been a team effort. All the discussions we've had in scrutiny, thank you, Catherine. Yes, it has been a team effort. We've learned a lot from one another, and I think this is a great way to be moving forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller-Bowen.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also suffering from a cough, so I'll try and keep this short. As a council, we all know we're facing budgetary pressures, and the leaders outlined this quite clearly. And as Councillor Williams has said, I don't think any of us got into politics to be facing this need to make millions in savings. But we've been elected as custodians of the city, trusted by our constituents to make hard decisions, to balance budgetary pressures with delivering the vital services our residents want and need. And that is what we've done in this budget this evening. With this new budget for the coming year, many of the contributions are focused on changes to services and ambitions for new projects and policies. But I want to take this opportunity to celebrate some of the fantastic initiatives we are able to continue to deliver because of the difficult choices we've made as a Labour-run council. Continued funding of the RAM, which was enjoyed by nearly 250,000 people in 2023 and brings in millions to our local economy each year. An award-winning retrofit programme to our housing stock, and as the leader pointed out, we're expecting 920 properties to be retrofitted by March, resulting in reductions in carbon emissions and helping our tenants to save money on their energy bills. And continued funding for city and ward grants, which provide local organisations support to deliver valuable work. And in Pinho, the grants this year have already supported cultural events to bring our diverse community together. I could go on and on, because this Labour Council delivers actions, not words. Whilst we always want to do more for our residents, the decisions we have taken will support our city's long-term financial health by balancing savings and continued investment in our city's future. And that is why I urge all councillors to support the budget as presented this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Foran.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've been sat here contemplating Councillor Mike Bishop's menu. Alan Carter or otherwise, and it wasn't particularly powerful, was it? What we were looking at. And I just thought some examples because in the 10 years I've been a councillor in Exeter, I've seen tens of millions of pounds disappear in funding. 7.5 million in the last 3 years, 3.5 million this year. It's almost impossible to find any meat left on the bone. So we said, no sacred cows. What's out there? So he said, you can close the land completely. Save yourself 1.5 million right away. You can remove the funding for all those MP organisations that get on to do it themselves. That's another few thousand more. What else? We can close all the remaining toilets. That'd be a good idea. We can charge all the badge holders who come to the city. That makes it popular. We can even stop deep cleaning our high street. 2.25 million right away. We haven't done any of those things. We haven't done any of those things, and we maintained our reserves as recommended by our Section 151 officer. Now, just up the road, the nearest biggest city is Bristol. For Bristol, all their public toilets remain closed. There have been suggestions to close half of the museums in Bristol, 1/3 of the libraries, a reduction of £635,000 in NPO funding, and there's even a current public consultation on a move to introduce monthly black bin collections. Public consultation at the moment. We have set this balanced budget, this positive budget, without using our reserves. I commend it to you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It has been interesting to listen to the amendments put forward by the two amendments put forward by the opposition parties, some of which involved ideas which could have been brought forward at any time, and certainly I would welcome exploring the feasibility of some of them. But the challenge was massive. We had to reduce our revenue account by £3.5 million. That's the money we had to save or increase in terms of income. We had to provide and we had to identify a balanced budget. It's not easy. The heavy lifting has been done by this administration. It's been fine-tuned or attempts to fine-tune it, but it's a huge job and the heavy lifting has been done by this administration. We've met the challenge whilst minimising the impact on the services we all rely on. I welcome talking about leisure services, as I would. I welcome the leader's comments about the service and all the fantastic statistics that he's quoted. There's so much more I could say. You'd probably be fed up with listening to me after a while. I am proud that since it was brought in-house, our fantastic leisure service has done some amazing work. The additionality, such as its partnership working with the NHS, provides far more than you would get from a standard contracted out leisure service. It's in line with Labour's core values. It's supplemented and supported by the Live and Move project, which is co-funded by Sports England. It does some amazing work in engaging some of our most difficult to reach residents and bringing them forward from inactivity to activity with all the health, physical health and mental health well-being that results from that. The leisure service began during COVID and it emerged into a raft of necessary regulations to protect residents' health, but far from ideal when launching a new service operating to a business model. The wider leisure industry as a whole is still struggling. It's worth noting many local authorities can no longer afford to run aged pools, and their residents now no longer have access to public pools at all. That's not the case in Exeter. Our service has continued to grow. The subsidy this council has wisely invested in our service is diminishing rapidly. We aren't asking for as much to run a fantastic flagship service. Of course, there's still a distance to go. The challenging savings identified in this budget are part of that journey. Obviously, no one wants to close facilities. But these are public funds. Sustainability, safety, value for money, maximising benefit for what are limited resources. These are crucial things. It's imperative that we do hear from all those that can be affected by the changes we have to make. And those that listening will inform the decisions. But this is part of a journey. It's from its launch during lockdown through the spiralling energy costs to finally reaching a cost-neutral service. Our leisure service has done an amazing journey. It has yet to make those last few yards to be a cost-neutral service, but these savings that we need to make this year will move it significantly in that direction. So I fully support this budget and I commend it, and thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. So the list of speakers is Councillor Alcock, Councillor Moore, Councillor Reid, Councillor Palmer, and then Councillor Wright has also indicated she wishes to use her seconder. Anyone else? Your last chance to wave at me. No? So we'll move then to Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And my colleagues have spoken very well about our achievements as a council and the difficult decisions that we've had to make, so I'll keep this brief. But I did just want to make a couple of comments about Northbrook, particularly in response to some of the things that I heard coming through the opposition. I want to make the point that as a ward councillor, we know just what a precious resource that is for our communities. We hear about it often on the doorstep, and the fact that we've not had this conversation sooner as a full council shows just how hard we've been working in the background to really invest in that service and make it sustainable for the community. And we hear about it a lot, just how well loved it is, but unfortunately we have not been seeing that translate into numbers going through the door. And as a ward team, we've worked very closely with officers for a number of years now to really look at the data, to think about what can we do differently, can we stagger opening times, can we look at staffing strategies, when are people coming, what are they coming to do, how can we get more people through the door. So this is absolutely not coming here as a sort of flippant thing by any means, but and again, as Councillor Wood has said, is subject to further consultation and assessment, but I think it's really important just for the record that we set out the work that we've done on that.
Thank you. Councillor Diana Moore.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We are a local council. We're here for our local communities and our environment. We're not here to reduce our services to the bare minimum for survival. On the council's website, it says that we're here to meet the challenges of ongoing reductions in funding by reducing costs, generating additional income, prioritising spend whilst maintaining good quality statutory services that meet residents' needs. I'm really concerned that the council will be continuing to cut back on discretionary services and become just a delivery arm of government. We need to make sure that we raise with government the fact that the grant from government to the council has reduced. So we have £200,000, I understand it is less than last year. We need to invest in our public services, and the council is the front line of that. And Councillor Williams, yes, I do hope we introduce glass recycling. We have to do all that we can to make it easy for residents. And we have, for the record, spoken with officers about these proposals and about running costs. The role of sale of glass, as you say, is very low. We generate about 35,000, which is not a lot. So which is why we included other sources of income. So, but we could have discussed that earlier at the amendment. So thank you for your observations. We have put this forward with our eyes wide open. We also need to make sure we do listen to our communities. The point about the Northbrook being well made, and thank you for your comments, Councillor Alcock. But I think it's really important that we understand that what we're doing is looking tonight to make a balanced budget. That is meaning that decision is going to be made tonight to close Northbrook. We've talked about consultation. Is this going to be transparent and open? Because we didn't know before tonight that this was the proposal. It wasn't set out in the amendments that were made. So if that doesn't happen, what will make up the gap? We need to be really clear with our communities about what is a genuine consultation and what is not. And finally, we do need to look to the future. We recognise the difficulties that many in our community are facing, and it seems to have come from the conversation this evening. I didn't realise that the agreement with the citizens' advice is just for 1 year. Maybe you can clarify, is that just for 1 year? It seems that many of our systems are crumbling, and we spend our time as councillors trying to get the system to work better, supporting officers who are really overburdened in some areas in trying to deal with the needs that are coming forward within the budgets that we have. On the website, it also says we have 3,584 applications on the housing waiting list. That figure has gone up hugely in the past few years. And I really would like to hear from the leader what the adjustments are that are going to be made around temporary housing that you mentioned. The Exeter programme is proposed to be closed down, but we don't hear about any more places for the severe weather protocol, which only has 8 places, not enough to meet those numbers that are sleeping rough on a nightly basis. And the former hostel on the Magdalen Road car park that I talked about at council a few meetings ago still remains empty, and the council still remains paying the lease. We have had additional funding this year for the extended producer responsibility, and that has made up the gap which has been created by the lack of grant from government and the increase in the national insurance. But with that is an environmental tax. At last, the producers are having to pay, and councils will be given that money. That is the money that we should be continuing to invest in our net zero team to actually address the environmental concerns that our communities have and the problems that we have in our city as the green spaces get nibbled away for all sorts of reasons, not least for development. So we need to prioritise that service. We need to reshift that money to make sure it has good environmental outcomes for our city. And that certainly would be a better investment in car parking fees on net zero. I'm reviewing that with a good sense of humour, because otherwise it could be rather depressing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid.
Thank you, thank you. You'll be delighted to hear I'm going to be extremely brief. I'm also going to try to see if we can break a record for the number of times we say toilets in a council meeting. Because just to pick up on your point, Councillor Fowles' point, Bristol does actually have a really excellent community toilet scheme, and it's something that several partners in the city here in Exeter are looking to put in place. So there are many ways to address this problem. I want to talk about just two things, please. One is I was very pleased to hear Lord Mayor, the leader, talk about doing a consultation about going cashless and the difficulty of protecting people who are affected by that and people who rely on paying in that way. And you mentioned, leader mentioned, Lord Mayor, holding a consultation to that effect. So I want to ask, please, can St Sidwell's Point be included in that consultation? Because currently you cannot just pay in cash to swim at St Sidwell's Point in the city, which I think is clearly disadvantaging many people and preventing many people accessing that service. And then the last thing is, I note in the report, this is slightly technical points on page 24 if you want to look it up, that it's stated that there is a risk of not getting the projected amounts from fees and charges. So the statement is here that in 2023-24, the council has missed targets of income from fees and charges, which the council relies on significant income from fees and charges to balance the budget. And in 2023-24, the council missed those targets by a cumulative £2 million. While this is reflected in the budget, a further 5% reduction would add £1.5 million to the budget. When you think about that and the risk of that, £50,000 for a scrutiny officer looks extremely good value. I would say if we're not going to be funding that proposal that we made, then perhaps we need something else put in place. And I'll be grateful if the leader could speak to that point to ensure that this council is not at risk of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Palmer.
And thank you. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the film Jerry Maguire and the infamous line, "You had me at hello," or "You lost me at car park." And I'm actually quite horrified by what I've heard this evening. So I think what I've heard is that we're going to put a car park that's not really a car park, but it's a temporary car park, to fund net zero. And I kind of laugh if it weren't quite so horrifying, because actually we all know the damage that cars cause in terms of air pollution. And actually the area that you're going to put your car park, that's not really a car park, but it is a car park in, is in one of our most deprived. And we also know that the health outcomes for people that live in those parts of cities is actually not as good as it should be. And that poor air quality plays a really key part in those poor health outcomes. And yet we're going to put a car park that's not really a car park, but it is a car park, in that space, instead of doing something that could have really benefited our community. That could have been paid for something, I don't know. But anything would have been better than a car park. Now, we have one planet, We have one opportunity to get this right. And I am just gobsmacked. Well, actually, I'm sure my Green colleagues are delighted because you've now got some great content for your next leaflet, that we are putting a car park to fund really critical kind of net zero work. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And as so many excellent contributions have been made already, I will keep it brief and put a line through most of what I've done here to try to avoid duplicating. But obviously I'm pleased, and to be honest, I'm constantly impressed really that we can continue to set a balanced budget for the coming year while keeping many of our discretionary services intact, as well as ensuring a high quality of delivery for our statutory services. And to do this while keeping a prudent level of reserves for any of those unforeseen circumstances that we have actually seen in the past few years is no mean feat. So I thank the leader and the Section 151 officer and all the officers that have worked on this. I just want to speak a little bit about the process because it has been mentioned quite a bit tonight, and I think this year it was an enhanced, improved process in many ways, with the Section 151 officer coming to scrutiny, also having all councillor briefings. But I also appreciate the point made by Councillor Mitchell that by the time we get here tonight, we're looking at amendments that have gone into the public domain before we, as a leading authority, what are we? Administration, thank you.
Ruling.
The ruling party, don't like to say that, but you know, we see that those when the public do, there's not an awful lot of detail there. You just see what we put forward when the public do, and also there's gaps that then get filled in tonight. So I just wanted to sort of say, I really appreciate what you're saying. The way forward to that, though, can only happen with ultimate trust with everybody. If we start next year talking about the budget a long time before we actually have to make the agreements on it, I would love to have the optimism to go into that, fully hoping that everybody could work together on it. But this is politics, and just when we think everything's getting cosy and we are working together, you suddenly find a few sort of knives being thrown, because that's what politics is. But having said that, I think yeah, you're right, we do need good cross-party work, and as the leader has already said lots of times and established when we're talking about the local government reorganisation, and these times are times when you could bring forward ideas such as have come up tonight in what should be a budget setting, well it is a budget setting meeting. Lots of ideas have come forward that could perhaps come forward during the leaders' meetings, could come forward by people that have got a question or an idea about something, as Councillor Williams said, approaching any one of the executive members to discuss, because otherwise we go on in a way where we don't have all the information. We're privileged because we do have lots of information over this side of the benches. There's nothing that we're trying not to share with you for any deliberate reason. Well, sometimes maybe if we're fearful of what will happen if we do start those discussions, and we see things as I saw on Twitter yesterday, which accuses us of not caring about the people of Exeter. So, no, I wasn't, sorry, I'm not looking at any. Yes, I'll show it to you later. So going forward with a more positive collaboration, I'm all for. Let's really hope we can do it. So some of those things, those questions, those ideas have been addressed by colleagues here that have got information from their portfolios. And I would just welcome any further questions outside of this meeting of anything that might come onto mind. So we're the balancing act of weighing up all of this, the incomings, outgoings, committed spends, prudent holding of reserves, and at the very least maintaining expected services, is an act which requires financial integrity and forward thinking. Obviously supporting the budget presented tonight as a financially viable outcome of this constant balancing process, which, as I said, has been going on all year behind the scenes and isn't just something we've plucked out of the air this week. Obviously enjoyed hearing a long list of achievements of this council, detailed by the leader in his speech. We tend to get used to having these achievements in place while having to focus a lot on ongoing budget management issues and making cuts. So hearing what we have achieved collectively, all of us as a council under this administration and this leader is really good. One aspect close to my heart I would like to mention, because there's a bit of news, is the success of the CCTV and monitoring service of it and the launch of our new community safety team, which has been a really good partnership working with in Exeter, funding from them and from the Police and Crime Commissioner. And really pleased that in Exeter are going to continue that funding. And I heard just before this meeting that the Police and Crime Commissioner is going to continue for another year as well. So we can work collaboratively with people across different political sides, as long as we're all knowing what it is we're going to do. I'm not going to say any of the next 25 pages. Just put those there. I would welcome it talks about the scrutiny officer proposal again outside of here, because there's a lot going on in democratic services with getting to a better, more efficient way of working. But also just to point out, it's not a scrutiny officer that holds executive to account. It's the scrutiny committee. The office is there to help the committee to function. And I would look forward to greater scrutiny, perhaps, of what we're doing through the scrutiny committee sometimes, because sometimes there's requests for officers to spend time giving information about things which is actually readily available on our own website. However, there have been many points of agreement across both sides of the table tonight, and again, I really look forward to trying to work together to continue to keep our finances afloat, our council afloat, as we move forward into this year. So I fully support this budget and thank the leader for his work on it.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Leader, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I think it's been an excellent discussion, and I'm very pleased with the portfolio holders and the members on this side of the chamber who have actually made a number of good points. The Deputy Lord Mayor talking about the realistic reserves, the prudent approach that we should take, advice from the LGA and taking the advice from the 151 officer. Councillor Verzard reminding us about the net zero. And I'll talk about that car park now, and I know it's got a lot of laughter. And I'm going to ask the leaders at the next meeting, please sit me down. I'll pull the blinds down. Just tell me what it is, and we'll look at that space together over the road. Tell me why you insist or you believe it should remain empty when you know full well there is no money available to do anything with the meanwhile use at this moment in time. Just explain that to me, and why we shouldn't take advantage. And you can do some rough calculations. If you just get 50 cars on there for a year, about 200k, is that extra cars coming in? Well, no, not really, because we're going to close 35 spaces down at the Triangle car park. You know that, don't you? You know we're going to end up closing Mary Archer's car park. So there's still going to be a demand. So just, I'll leave it to you. Explain to me why, apart from this zealot approach to we hate cars, we can't have cars in the city, because I don't get it. So what we intend to do, Lord Mayor, is go out to consultation. We've already been on the consultation with regard to that. We had three responses. One from a political party and two other people responded. One for, one against. So when I'm listening to the people, and I'm told to engage. You've got to listen to people. We've listened. We will be going out again to consultation in relation to the car park charges. And all those issues that we wanted to raise, we're going out and we will listen, and it will come back, and it will be available. So I don't see the problem there. And if we've got it wrong, and I know for everybody will say, don't put it up, but we didn't get a lot of plaudits for not increasing it for the last 2 years. Not at all, through that cost of living crisis, and we have to do something. As for the Sundays that has been mentioned, that was already part of the previous consultation, so nothing new there, and we'll wait and see what the officer brings forward, and it will come forward on what we go out to consultation on, I can assure you. So, I think somehow that setting some money for a net zero budget is quite sensible, to be quite honest with you, and I do believe we have to do it. I've been asked about the consultation process with regard to SSP and the funding. The consultation will be about the car parks and the charging of the car parks by removing the cash. So make it understood that that's what that consultation is about. We will also be bringing forward, and Councillor Parker's mentioned, the fact that we will be discussing not just the budget, but also the resident survey will most probably go to scrutiny. Take a look at it. So, and that's the place to do it, and we will read it back. And what I would say, when we're talking about the scrutiny, there was a bit of a lag, but a recent one that we discussed at scrutiny, or you discussed at scrutiny, you asked us the specific question as scrutiny. A specific question: will the executive look at entering into a revised arrangement of the rent? Didn't say anything else. And that's what we've done. And we're having those discussions. In the first instance, it is for a year, okay? And what we've said is we're developing a working relationship with the CAB, one that can work properly without these outside pressures put on us. There's a lot to be discussed in there, and the officers are doing a lot of work. And I'm going to mention this word, trust. I trust the directors and the officers of this council to bring me the information that they do in a cool, sensible way forward. And the day the trust goes between politicians and the directors or the officers will be a sad day for this council, in my view. Councillor Park has also mentioned about the leisure service, and so did Councillor Wood, and he's quite right. So I heard what Councillor Palmer said about Northbrook. And yeah, nobody wants to close it. Nobody wants to close it. However, we have to look at the code light of day. And you heard Councillor Alcock, and I know Councillor Williams and Morse before that, and even Councillor Paul, have all been involved talking to the community. And of course, when asked the question, should we close Northbrook? Of course the answer is no. Of course the answer is no. But we have to make these decisions in order to keep the service going. It's not as if you're in Cornwall, where they're all closed, or in some other district authorities which have to operate at great distance. And if some political parties get that way, that's where we may be. That you have to go 14 miles to get to a leisure centre. That doesn't happen in this city. That doesn't happen, and we don't want it to happen. But we will be out to consultation. So if St James School and everything else like that, if they want to take it over as a community asset, I think that's a great idea. If they want to take it over, take it off our hands, that would be fantastic. If that could come forward, and we will do that. And that is why in the budget speech I was proposing about the arena, that we would be working with a partner about releasing something like up to £300,000. Surely that makes sense, still keeping the community used. Nobody didn't have much to say about that, disappointingly. Councillor Williams, I think, what an excellent portfolio owner I have there. Because if anybody's got their brave, Councillor Williams has in detail to answer all those things, and I'm so pleased. Still not giving me a direct answer, and I'm getting recycled new bin up in my house, but that's besides the point. I will wait, and most people understand that we will do it, and you know why we have to go there 10 years afterwards. Because we have to reinvest £8 million and maybe more in the MRF. You know it's a capacity issue, you know it's a legal issue, but I don't blame you to keep banging me on the head about it. All right, when we do it, and I know that put it in your leaflet, it's okay, but we have to make sure we can deal with it, and we're doing that, and you supported that, and we will do it, and we hope in the long term to make money from that, and that's what we want to do. Unlike some of those authorities, I won't say what political colour they are, they've contracted it all out. Also was raised about housing. Well, we do have our own housing, in-house housing. And I know the list is high. I know it's a list. And I know people want those homes. And you know, there's a duty on us to bring forward developments in this city which allows us to bring homes. And that's why I was so pleased with the planning committee in bringing forward a proposal for 980 homes at Water Lane. Much needed, much needed. That should help us quite well in the city. And our Exeter plan also brings forward what we are doing. So Councillor Williams, Councillor Harding made some good points about, because he goes out running a lot, and I know what it's like when you run a lot at my age. You need access to these toilets, and we've not closed any. We've not closed any at all. And when we were talking about, you don't mind me saying about the national portfolio holder and taking that, it was the dead cat story. We were talking about something that wasn't going to happen, and I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. We are not withdrawing any money from the national portfolio or the RAM. Now, when we talk about cost centres, and I know now the world is going globally now into transactional sort of everything, and that's what I think Councillor Jobson was saying. But, you know, we built SSP. Yes, it has got a debt. We also funded a large proportion of it. And actually, I think 1.6 million users actually tells you that that was a good thing. Actually, we're talking about children swimming, 2,500 learning to swim at SSP, 2,000 learning to swim down at Riverside, 4,500 is testimony to the work and the services we are providing. We cannot get into that each one, because if you were, by the way, if you were setting those principles, that we have to have these cost centres so narrow like that, the RAM will survive, won't it? The RAM will survive. But what we do is we put the money into the pot for overall, and that is the sensible way forward. And I understand what you're saying about the employer's tax on that. We need to do that this year, and we'll see. It's sound advice from the 151 officer that we were presented with the national insurance contributions that we had to increase. I get that. I have to say, I much prefer employers pay it than working people pay it. The working people didn't have their national insurance put up. The working people didn't. And I'm quite pleased that that didn't happen. And so we've had to suck that up, and we have. And a very good way of doing it on this year. And it will go to the budget for next year, and we will have these things to find. And there will be those decisions. So Councillor Fowl made a good contribution, and I welcome that from that point of view. Councillor Molly Bowen also came up with about the budget pressures, the rounds, the retrofit, the water grants, the savings investment, all these are important contributions. And when you go on about grant funding, you talk as if it's all over in Exeter. You talk as if everything's so bad. That is the end of the telescope you only ever look at. And I feel that's such a bad way, and I understand it. We're in a political game here. You've got to get votes. You're constantly fighting, like, I get it. But there comes a time to come to the table to actually make sense about all these things. So we will carry on working, we will. And so there's been some comments, and I'm coming to the conclusion now, Lord Mayor. I've already spoken to the Chief Executive, and actually I talked upstairs over a cup of tea with you before we started, that I welcomed the gauntlet that was thrown down and picked up by the opposition side, okay? And as I said jokingly, you had all the right numbers, but not necessarily in the right order. And I get all of that. Now we had had, and Councillor Wright mentioned it, we had had a series of meetings. Now for those of us who can remember, maybe Councillor Fulham can remember from years ago, and I can see he's so pleased he's come back on. I can see that you're really happy about it. That the budget meetings were over in about 45 minutes to an hour. 45 minutes to an hour. Because it was all done before. But I'm not being funny. I get it. You've got to make political points. You've got to justify and tell people why they voted for you. You want to go and tell. I get it. But then don't get upset when we take an opposing view. It's called politics. So what I do intend to do, and I will speak to you at the next leaders meeting, or if not the next one, because I feel sure we'll be consumed about another particular subject at this moment in time, about, let's have some thoughts about how we do that. Let's have some thoughts about could we get there. And actually it's a bit of a challenge for yourselves, actually, because you know what's happened when you go into coalitions, it never works for the Lib Dems, does it? You know that. So you'd have to be agreeing to something. Or will you, and this will be the question I want you to reflect on, or will you come to those meetings, we'll talk about it, you'll hear what we say, these ideas, will you then reserve the right to come to this meeting and propose a further amendment? Now at that point, that is being the problem, you see. You either say you want to work in collaboration, or you say we want to hold the executive and the ruling group to account. You have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. And I'm happy to put in a different process next year, so whereby by December, as we always used to, by the way, have an agreed way forward. Okay? And let's look to see if we could do that. And what I will be suggesting to you is there is a moratorium during that process on social media about these things. Because I'll tell you now, Lord Mayor, I'm not ashamed of the budget we've put forward. I'm not ashamed of Labour in this city representing people. And I do take it very badly that words like ashamed, Labour should be ashamed of what they're proposing. It's wrong before we've had any discussion. And the other challenge I give is, you tell me where you hear me say that in a public forum about any of you, because you never will. I will say it in here in a proper way forward. Lord Mayor, this is an important budget. We've got 2 or 3 years, we've got to see what goes on. I would add on that, I'm not proposing a fire sale of anything here in this city. We will act in a responsible way forward. We all have big aspirations for the future of what Exeter will be part of to main our historic way of going forward, and that is so, so important. So let's start now, Lord Mayor, with this collective approach to setting the budget by unanimously voting for this budget. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for everyone for contributing to a lengthy but very important debate. As I stated at the beginning, the law stipulates that we have to take a named vote on this item, so I'm going to hand over to Mark Devlin again to do the roll call. Mark.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Again, when I call your names, can you please state clearly if you're for, against, or abstaining? And if possible, if you could use the microphone, just the audio up here is a bit, doesn't travel up. Thank you. Councillor Alcock. Councillor Asfashin.
For.
Councillor Banyard.
Again.
Councillor Begley.
For.
Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bialik.
For, 100%.
Councillor Ellis-Jones. Councillor Fall.
For, 150%.
Councillor Fulham.
Against.
Councillor Hay.
For.
Councillor Harding.
For.
Councillor Jobson.
Against.
Councillor Ketchin.
Against.
Councillor Knott.
For.
Councillor Miller-Bowen.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
This year, against.
Councillor Moore.
Against.
Councillor Palmer.
There's not really enough number, but against.
Councillor Parkhouse.
For.
Councillor Patrick.
For.
Councillor Pole.
For.
Councillor Reid.
Against.
Councillor Rees.
Abstaining.
Councillor Ralston.
For.
Councillor Snow. For. Councillor Vizard.
For.
Councillor Wetnall.
Against.
Councillor Williams, Ruth Williams.
For.
Councillor Wood. For. Councillor Wright.
For.
Lord Mayor.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. Give me a moment, I'll just quickly count back. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's 19 votes in favour, Lord Mayor. That's 10 votes against with 2 abstentions. So that has been carried.
Thank you, Mark. Before we move on to the next item, item number 6, I'm going to propose we have a comfort break. So we'll now have a short comfort break so everyone can mingle, and we'll come back later.
Okay, we'll meet outside and work what's going to be next.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. The next item on the agenda is agenda item 6, starting on page 159, which relates to the Q3 overview of the general fund revenue budget. Councillor Bialik, I understand you will introduce this item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to move the 5 recommendations, but before we go into debate, Lord Mayor, I understand 151 officer will speak to, as he would do if this came to an executive, and then take questions at the end. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, I'd like to second.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So, Dave, please come forward.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So as Councillor Parkhouse said, I do present to a lot of committees, but this is the first time in 25 years that I presented to full council. So this is the overview of the General Fund budget at Q3, and this is the first time that council will have considered this report during this financial year. So normally this comes to the April Executive and April Council for consideration, when of course the financial year is over and there's nothing you can do about the results. So this is far more timely in terms of it coming to be considered by Council. In terms of the financial position for the General Fund budget, there's still challenges in terms of income, and they were mentioned earlier, particularly around planning income and car parking, although I'm pleased to say that commercial property income is back on track. Temporary accommodation continues to be challenging, and this is also having a negative impact on the health and benefit budget. However, overall, the financial position of the General Fund has improved since Q2, although I will remind members that there will be supplementary budget requests at the year end for a number of projects that cover more than 1 year. So in overall terms, we're looking roughly around the position that you've just been considering for the budget for next year. I'd like to draw members' attention to 2 supplementary budget requests. Firstly, for an income and expenditure budget for the RAM Cafe, which is now reopening. These are cost neutral, so balance each other out. And then there's a budget to bring forward the case in response to the government's invitation in respect of local government reorganisation. And this will be funded by repurposing an earmark reserve as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We'll now move into debate. Would anyone like to speak on this item? I don't see. Councillor Wright. Leader.
Well, if I'm ending the debate at this time, Lord Mayor, would just make a remark in relation, in relation to page 160, 8.2, which tells us about the senior leadership of the council, the reductions. Has actually achieved £350,000. There's a lot of discussion about, is it worth it? What's it going to do to saving? £350,000. I think it's worth noting, Lord Mayor. And again, thank you to all those people who made it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. And so we will now move to the vote on this item. All those in favour, please show.
It's unanimous, Lord Mayor. That has been carried.
No,
sorry, I don't apologise.
Anyone against?
Abstention, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Now move on to item 7 on the agenda, starting on page 183, which relates to the Q3 General Fund Capital Monitoring Statement. Leader.
Here again, Lord Mayor, I'd like to move the 2 recommendations, and again, any questions on the detail of the report, the 151 officer hopefully will be able to deal with them. Thank you.
Dave, do you have anything to add at this time? And thank you for your second.
So I'll just briefly highlight that this Q3 Capital Monitoring Report delivery remains challenging, as reported previously with the capital programme, with only 18.5% spent so far. However, some significant projects are now underway, and it's anticipated that this will improve throughout the remainder of this financial year and into next year. Some £15.3 million is being proposed to be deferred to next financial year. There is one request for additional funding of £182,000 for the current project to enhance Topsham Museum. Further work is required to stabilise the building and ensure its long-term future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Moore.
Just a question on page 185. Either from the leader or from Dave. It's in regard to the Riverside and Round. We all understand the situation that occurred there in regard to the last bidding process. But I understood that we're now part of the new bidding process, and I just wondered at what stage we'll get an update, whether we were successful or not, partially or complete, in regard to the previous one being carried forward. Thank you.
Councillor Moore, would you like to ask your question?
Very much, Lord Mayor. Just really concerned about continued underspend on delivery, and I understand that there's a new director, a new staff member, head of commercial assets being appointed. How does the portfolio holder feel that they will look at getting to grips with delivery, improving the capacity of the team to be able to deliver on priorities that the council identified?
Thank you. Dave, would you like to answer the question from Councillor Mitchell?
So the bid has gone in for PSDS 4, and it's currently being considered by Salix, who run the projects on behalf of the government, and we expect to hear imminently as to whether we've been successful.
Thank you very much. And Leader?
There's nobody else, just to say on that last point, we put, I believe it's something like £900,000 in the budget towards Riverside and Round, and that's still there in the budget. Just to remind, we gave an undertaking not to take that away. Obviously, we're going for the funding, and we'll see where that gets us to, but I believe the team will put in a very strong bid. In relation to, yes, we've got a new head of service, I've met him. I know he's got a big job ahead. The team's been a little bit under-resourced lately, but I don't think that's the reason. I think there's a number of reasons on why some of this has to come forward. I will be talking to the team in morning. I've actually got somebody to talk to in the portfolio up there. I'll be able to deal with a lot of these things. But I am noticing that there are a lot of walls collapsing, and we have to deal with these, because if you don't keep the walls up, the roof will come off. So I think, Lord Mayor, there's much work to do, and I will be meeting with the director and the head of service in order to talk through this on why, to make sure we need to start getting on with some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
That is unanimous, Lord Mayor, that has been carried.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to item number 8, starting on page 197, which relates to Q3 HRA budget monitoring report. Leader.
Yes, Lord Mayor, here there's a recommendation that we note the position and we approve the revision of the HRA capital programme in Appendix 4, and I feel sure, once again, Lord Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. And Dave?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So this is the HRA budget as at Q3. No significant change to report from the financial position that was reported at the end of Q2. I'm pleased to say that repairs and maintenance expenditure is now stabilised, and therefore it's a broadly similar position we're projecting. I would, however, like to note that the capital programme for the housing revenue account is being delivered well, with around 65% having been delivered in the first 3 quarters. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell first, and Councillor Moore.
In regards to Appendix 1, page 207, which is sort of basic bridging of risks, etc.
Two of the areas are indicated at risk, at the highest level of risk. In view of these are quarterly reports, is it the function of the team to monitor this where red appears, to monitor it more closely rather than just waiting for another decision at the end of the next quarter?
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Again, to provide a case study in order to make my point, I have a resident who has a front door that won't shut properly, and I've been working with them to try and get it properly fixed. And we've had a surveyor around, who ran, and years around, who had a surveyor around, who ran, and years around again, and probably quite a few going in and out. And we've been told that the door can't be replaced because we haven't got enough money. But then the next day they got a letter saying, if you've got a problem with your door, your front door, report it immediately because it's a fire door and it's really important. So we're giving residents mixed messages about our financial position and things like fire safety. Please, can you tell me what you're going to do in terms of communicating clearly with residents about priorities for funding in terms of maintenance and ensuring that essentials get fixed?
Thank you. Dave, would you like to respond to the first point?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so absolutely where something's highlighted as red, that means we tend to monitor that on a monthly basis, and we'll discuss with the resident people any issues that are highlighted so that they can act more quickly.
Thank you. Leader, would you like to respond to the second?
Well, Lord Mayor, I get it. Somebody presenting with an issue like this, the motive issue, because I think that's serious. If you're telling me that there's a fire door in somebody's house, connected to somebody's house, and we've told them that we've got no money to do it, I wonder why. Now, what I always ask is, what did the person say? Because sometimes that may be an interpretation, that may be the interpretation that somebody's receiving. So I always go with caution. I don't tend to point the finger. I think Councillor has fashioned the portfolio has heard it, and I feel sure that one of the directors will deal with it, and I feel sure I will get an answer back and a process to deal with this going forward. As for the other repairs, I think in the report it tells you about the number of repairs that we are making within the HRA, and in the main, I think at the meeting, I think there's one on Thursday, the Hat Chat or something that's not really known, and I feel sure that there's people there who raise these things. I've been thoroughly surprised. The feedback I get is that we provide a good service. Of course, everybody wants something to happen before it happens. Right, I get that. But I do understand this. I do take it seriously. We can't have that if that is the case. And I feel sure portfolio will come back to me to explain what has happened, what's gone wrong, and what we intend to do about it to put these things right, and to assure me that that sort of thing does not happen again if it did indeed happen. But I must investigate it first, Lord Mayor, before I go pointing the fingers or any words to the director or chief executive about whatever. I need to establish the facts clear to me, and I'll give that on the second. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now move to the vote on this item. All those in favour of recommendations, please show.
As unanimous, Lord Mayor, that has been carried.
So that now brings us to the end of the meeting. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance and contributions. please do stay for tea and coffee if you wish to do so. Thank you very much.
Those are able to take your stand in order for those that are next to us.